for the generous hospitality. I would also like to extend a special welcome to those joining the meeting of the Standing Committee for the very first time. Before we proceed, please note that in line with our usual practice, this meeting is being recorded, as you know, and will be made available on the OSCE YouTube channel. Should any member wish to raise an issue order, do it on point 8, any other business, and please inform the International Secretariat at the podium in advance. May I also take this opportunity to remind all delegations that members wishing to take the floor during the open debates are kindly asked to sign up with the International Secretariat office at least 1 hour before the start of each session. I repeat it again, 1 hour before. During this meeting, you may request the floor by raising your hand or nameplate. And finally, please note that our meeting is scheduled to conclude at 12 o'clock. And I would like to say before everything that thank you to the teams of translators that will be here until 12 for us. Then I would like to start to ask you first if we can adopt the agenda for this meeting, which has been, as you all know, circulated. So can we adopt the agenda? So the agenda is adopted. So on the report of the presidency, a written report was distributed last week regarding the activities of the presidency since July. So I would like to start with some remarking points on this report. So I think, first of all, that we are gathering here in Istanbul at a very defining moment for our region. It is clear that conflict has returned to the heart of Europe. We have assisted to violations of national airspaces and growing hybrid threats that remind us that no state is immune, as regional security is fragile and instability risks spilling across borders. We face not only open war, but also hybrid attacks, disinformation, and cyber threats that erode trust and test our democracies. Global crises continue to strain the foundations of peace, cooperation, and dialogue. And in this complex environment, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly must remain a high-level, principled, and looking forward voice. Strong, united, and active, defending our shared commitments to peace, democracy, and human rights. And I would like to repeat it again, that Ukraine remains central to our mission. After almost 4 years of Russian aggression, the Ukrainian people continue to face immense human and military suffering. We condemn this war in the strongest terms, this full-scale invasion. We condemn it. And we reaffirm our unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. And this afternoon, I will officially announce that the OSCPA will join the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children as another of our contributions to justice and accountability. And also the humanitarian crisis in the Middle East, especially in Gaza, demands our attention. The suffering of civilians must never be forgotten. The protection of civilians and respect for international humanitarian law are not negotiable. And peace and justice must always guide our interventions. We support the vision of a just, lasting peace, as it was stated in the Porto, based on 2 states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in security and mutual recognition. To reinforce our engagement, I have proposed the establishment of an ad hoc committee on the Middle East and Afghanistan, a proposal supported by more than 20 parliamentarians, so that our Assembly contributes meaningfully to dialogue and stability in these regions. And closer to home, our recent field visit to Bosnia and Herzegovina was deeply informative. The memory of Srebrenica reminds us all of the consequences of hatred and division. It reaffirmed our duty to support reconciliation, justice, and human dignity across all OSCE participating states. I would like to remind you and repeat that the work on the ground of the OSCE is essential, and our interlocutors had a clear message for us. Local leaders must take ownership of progress. They must take institutions' work for today and for the future. This is also our job in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. And in Georgia, we have pushed quite diplomacy in the last months across the political spectrum to help de-escalate tensions after recent local elections, reflecting our Assembly's impartiality and tradition of consensus building. And in the South Caucasus, today is 101 days after the peace sign agreements between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Renewed dialogue between Armenia and Azerbaijan offers hope for lasting peace and reconstruction. The OSCE stands ready to support both sides in advancing confidence-building measures and humanitarian cooperation. And Bosnia and Herzegovina will hold elections next year, as will several other OSCE countries. And it's important to repeat again that our commitment on electoral integrity is unwavering. And the Assembly must continue to play a big role in election observation. And we must also recognize that democratic processes across our region are under growing pressure. Election interference, disinformation, and the misuse of technology are eroding public trust and weakening accountability. Beyond these immediate threats, we also face deeper challenges to democracy, the growing concentration of technological and financial power in the hands of few, what some call technocratic capture. And this threatens transparency and accountability and must be confronted together. So our observation missions must therefore not only assess the vote itself, but also the wider context, defending democracy against the forces that seek to undermine it. But let me be blunt. If we want to observe more elections, we need more resources. And now that we are here in Istanbul, the global community is meeting in Brazil for COP, and we must remember that climate change and environmental degradation are reshaping the security landscape. From droughts to Central Asia to floods in Europe, environment stress fuels instability. And you know that without climate security, there will be no global security. So, dear colleagues, since my election, I have put an emphasis on renewing our leadership with a gender-balanced, regionally diverse team, and gender equality and youth inclusion are priorities, not aspirations. The governance reforms and action plan that I presented in my written report offer a clear path to transparency and accountability. They are the reflection, actually, of years of discussions in the Bureau and shared dedication since at least 2 and 3 years, also with the previous president. So with this basis, on that basis, we can implement reforms that strengthen our Assembly to respond to an ever-evolving geopolitical environment that demands our vigilance and cooperation. And if you allow me as President, I would like to end speaking a few words in Spanish. Simplemente quería agregar que la Asamblea Parlamentaria es una oportunidad para seguir teniendo presencia en el terreno, en contextos clave e importantes, y por tanto les invito a que tengamos máxima presencia en el terreno y, por supuesto, un compromiso político para como dice el libro de reciente aparición de Marcus Gabriel, para que el mejor negocio de los negocios sea hacer el bien. Muchísimas gracias y espero que haya comentarios y cuestiones al respecto de este informe. Muchas gracias. I would like to ask you if there are any comments, any questions, any remarks. Okay. Okay, we have some members already on the list. The first member is Ainur Argunikova from Kazakhstan. She's there.
Уважаемый президент Понс, уважаемые коллеги, прежде всего хотела бы выразить благодарность турецкой стороне, а также секретариату парламентской ассамблеи ОБСЕ за оказанный теплый прием. Для меня большая честь выступать перед вами в новом для себя статусе специального представителя по изменению климата. Пользуясь случаем, позвольте выразить глубокую признательность президенту господину Понсу за оказанное высокое доверие и возможность внести свой вклад в совместную работу. Символично, что в юбилейный год 50-летия Хельсинского заключительного акта финское председательство определило изменение климата и безопасности ключевыми приоритетами во втором измерении. Важно отметить, ровно 15 лет назад по итогам саммита в Астане была принята Астанинская декларация, вновь подтвердившая основные принципы Хельсинского духа. Уважаемые коллеги, особую озабоченность вызывает ситуация в Центральной Азии, где изменение климата проявляется в стремительном сокращении ледников и снежного покрова, которые являются главными источниками водных ресурсов. По инициативе президента Казахстана господина Токаева в партнерстве с ООН в апреле 2026 года в Казахстане пройдет региональный экологический саммит высокого уровня. Мы приветствуем участие парламентской ассамблеи ОБСЕ в этом важном направлении. Также намерены активно взаимодействовать с региональным центром ООН по целям в области устойчивого развития для Центральной Азии и Афганистана, учрежденным в августе этого года в Алматы. Уважаемые коллеги, представляя отчет о состоянии климата для Постоянного комитета, в заключение хотела бы отметить, роль парламентской ассамблеи критически важна. Наша организация может и должна играть ключевую роль для безопасности и благополучия наших граждан. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to say that there is a report on the COP30 released just now by the Parliamentary Assembly and by the Special Representative on Climate Change, so you can have access on the dossier to this report. So thank you very much again for this first report during the COP30. And now Lucia Tajer from Slovenia has the floor.
Thank you very much, President Pons, for your remarks. I would like to congratulate you for identifying the priorities. I had the pleasure of attending your visit to Ukraine, and I'm glad to hear that today will be the formal announcement of joining the coalition for bringing back the deported children that you highlighted during our visit. The priority and support of Ukraine is paramount, but I'm also happy that you are taking steps to strengthen the work for peace in the Middle East. So I definitely also support the proposal on the working group on this topic. We must work to discuss these regional issues, because even for countries that are not directly in the OSCE area, we know the impact that they have on us. As a special representative on youth engagement, I will definitely take part in these discussions and look forward to engaging with you and other parliamentarians that are interested in advancing the youth peace and security agenda in their countries in the next sessions here in Istanbul. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia, and I think we'll have time later to discuss on this working group. And now I would like to give the floor to the head of the delegation of Tajikistan, Mr. Gulzoda. Thank you. You have the floor.
Огромное спасибо, уважаемый председатель, уважаемые коллеги, дамы и господа. От имени делегации Республики Таджикистан позвольте выразить глубокое уважение и признательность организаторам за возможность принять участие в инаугурационной сессии, посвященной знаменательной дате 50-летию Хельсинкского заключительного акта. Этот документ стал краеугольным камнем современной архитектуры международной безопасности, доверия и сотрудничества, на основе которых строится деятельность Организации по безопасности и сотрудничеству в Европе. 50 лет спустя принципы, заложенные в Хельсинки, остаются не только историческим наследием, но и живым ориентиром, к которому мы обращаемся в условиях нарастающей геополитической турбулентности, новых форм конфликтности и глобальных вызовов. Мир переживает период неопределенности, кризиса доверия, рост дезинформации, изменения климата, энергетическая нестабильность и новые угрозы безопасности ставят перед нашими государствами задачи, которые невозможно решить в одиночку. Именно поэтому укрепление многосторонности через диалог в сотрудничестве приобретает особую актуальность. Опыт ОБСЕ свидетельствует, что безопасность невозможно обеспечить исключительно военной и экономической мощью. Настоящая устойчивость достигается тогда, когда государство руководствуется принципами транспарентности, взаимного уважения и прав человека. Современная многосторонность требует нового дыхания. Парламентские институты должны стать живыми площадками взаимодействия, где обсуждаются не только политические различия, но и пути консенсуса, примирения и долгосрочного сотрудничества. Для Таджикистана понятие многостороннего взаимодействия имеет особое значение. Мы рассматриваем его как основу региональной стабильности и устойчивого развития. В этой связи деятельность нашей страны строится вокруг трех ключевых направлений. Первое направление – обеспечение безопасности и устойчивости региона. Второе направление – устойчивого развития и климатической безопасности. Третье направление – развитие связано с сотрудничеством региональной связанности. Это новая форма дипломатии, объединяющая структуры, торговлю, цифровизацию и человеческие контакты. Таджикистан активно продвигает инициативы по созданию транспортных и энергетических коридоров, обеспечивая цифровую интеграцию, упрощению таможенных процедур, поддержка малого и среднего бизнеса. Многосторонность – это не только внешняя политика, это культура уважения и доверия, которые начинаются внутри каждого государства. Там, где есть политическая воля, открытость и готовность к партнерству, там многосторонность становится живой практикой. Таджикистан убежден, что будущее ОБСЕ зависит от способности объединять усилия, а не противопоставлять их, от умения слышать и понимать, а не навязывать, совместного поиска решений, основанных на уважении к суверенитету и равноправию. Ответственная парламентская работа способна превратить вызовы современности в новую повестку сотрудничества, справедливости и доверия. И именно парламенты сегодня несут особую миссию стать хранителем духа Хельсинки, чтобы следующие 50 лет ОБСЕ стали эпохой возрождения многосторонности, диалога и взаимного уважения. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate this idea of cooperation and mentioning the idea of multilateralism and the strong cooperation among parliamentarians. And yesterday was a very good example of this, when we had all the afternoon, more than 5 hours, discussing about the future of Ukraine, elections in Ukraine, even in these painful times for the country and for the population. So this is, I think, the way that the Parliamentary Assembly has to proceed. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Rachkov from Belarus. He has the floor.
Спасибо. Господин председатель, благодарим вас за отчет, в котором вы затронули некоторые болевые точки в регионе ответственности ОБСЕ. Сегодня на европейском континенте доминируют противостояние и недоверие. ОБСЕ все меньше напоминает инклюзивную площадку для диалога и все больше арену политических обвинений и взаимных упреков. Беларусь убеждена, будущее ОБСЕ зависит не от того, кто займет пост председателя, и даже не от того, будет ли принят бюджет организации. Судьба нашей организации зависит от политической воли государств-участников восстановить уважение, диалог и доверие. То, ради чего Хельсинки 1975 вообще происходил. Беларусь твердо выступает за восстановление подлинных принципов Хельсинского заключительного акта – равноправия, неделимости безопасности и невмешательства во внутренние дела. Без этого невозможно ни подлинное доверие, ни устойчивый мир. Находясь в центре Европы, Беларусь, как никто другой, заинтересована в восстановлении мира, безопасности и стабильности на европейском континенте и делает для этого все возможное. Но складывается впечатление, что Европе мир не нужен. Политики забыли, какие ужасы принесла Вторая мировая война. Поверили, что наращивание военного потенциала может обезопасить. Это путь в никуда. Мы предлагаем начать предметную работу по формированию новой евразийской архитектуры безопасности, охватывающей всю общую географию от Ванкувера до Владивостока, от Рейкьявика до Шанхая. Обсуждение будущего ОБСЕ и евразийской безопасности должно проходить в конструктивном, инклюзивном формате. Беларусь готова принимать у себя подобные встречи, в том числе на площадке Минской конференции по евразийской безопасности, которая уже стала традиционной. Третья Минская международная конференция по евразийской безопасности на тему «Глобальный мир без порядок и головоломка евразийской безопасности» прошла 28-29 октября 2025 года. Итоги конференции показали востребованность этой диалоговой площадки и повышенный интерес к ней со стороны государств евразийского пространства. Мероприятие стало масштабным форумом, который объединил министров, дипломатов и аналитиков из 48 государств и 7 международных организаций. Мы искренне рады, что количество тех, кто готов к диалогу и не безразлично относится к нашему будущему, неуклонно растет. Прошел обстоятельный обмен мнениями по широкому спектру вопросов безопасности, от военно-политических аспектов до борьбы с транснациональными вызовами и угрозами, такими как нелегальная миграция, а также по информационной и экономической безопасности, о которой, кстати, господин председатель, вы говорили в своем отчете. Беларусь этим инвестирует в дипломатию, а не в вооружение. Мы приглашаем все государства-участники к диалогу без предварительных условий и политических требований. Уважаемые коллеги, 50 лет назад в Хельсинки наши лидеры доказали, что дипломатия сильнее оружия, что диалог способен преодолеть самые глубокие противоречия. Сегодня у нас есть наш шанс вернуть дух Хельсинки не словами, а действиями. И если не мы, то кто сохранит ОБСЕ как организацию для этого диалога? Благодарю вас за внимание.
Thank you, Mr. Ratskov. And it's always interesting, as we are parliamentarians and we have a meeting on this information this afternoon, that as parliamentarians we also distinguish between accusations and telling the truth. And it's our role to distinguish clearly, as you mentioned, the word accusations. Maintenant, Monsieur Demilly a la parole au nom de la France. Vous avez la parole, Monsieur Demilly.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci à la délégation turque pour cet accueil dans ce magnifique endroit. Au risque d'être un peu léger après les propos de mes collègues, je voudrais faire une intervention non pas sur le fond, mais sur la forme. Et c'est même un satisfecit sur la forme, ça fait du bien dans les temps qui courent. Nous avions pris une résolution sur le multilinguisme à Porto. Cette résolution se traduit dans les faits, preuve en est. Nos débats de commission permanente, et notamment ceux d'aujourd'hui, sont aujourd'hui traduits en 8 langues. J'ai vu que même les communiqués de presse étaient aujourd'hui traduits en plusieurs langues. Et donc, je voulais tout simplement féliciter et remercier l'organisation de la POSCE.
Merci beaucoup, M. Demilly. Et à nouveau, le fait d'avoir comme langue de travail plusieurs langues de travail au quotidien, je pense que c'est un signe de richesse et un signe de pluralité. Et on va faire de notre mieux pour essayer de remplir cette diversité avec des faits. Merci beaucoup à nouveau. Et maintenant, Mr. Guliev has the floor from Azerbaijan.
Thank you very much, dear President Pere, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start from, first of all, thanking to our Turkish friends and Turkish hosts for an excellent organization of our 23rd autumn meeting in Istanbul, in beautiful city. And coming back to the report of you, Mr. President, and also your proposal about the action plan for upcoming 2 years, I think it really deserves to be broadly considered within the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, because there are a lot of important proposals and the issue that you have put forward. I say some of them we have been discussing for many years, but luckily you put together and submitted to the Standing Committee for our further approval. I think one of the important items you have put, of course, there are many things I don't want to go through of all them, but there are something that needs to be discussed broadly, as I said. One of them is to have a close cooperation engagement with the OSCE governmental structure. You know that this is a topic that we have many times discussed here, but unfortunately still there is a gap and there is still room to improve. So my suggestion is to find the possibility to institutionalize the regular meeting between OSCE President and the chairs of the 3 committees and also special representatives with OSCE chairperson in office, OSCE Secretary General on a regular basis to discuss and to find a kind of alignment with the agenda of both institutions. It would be, I think, enough useful for our further activities. And the second, I do believe that we can also consider and look very carefully at the proposal how the annual sessions decisions or the declarations or resolution adopted by all 3 committees and the general by the Assembly could be very professionally integrated into the activities of the governmental side. One of the idea, of course, we know that we have traditionally being sent to the resolution to the Ministerial Council, but I think it would be good if each general committees would have a possibility to, let's say, discuss and to submit their findings and their proposals or their resolution to the relevant institution of the OSCE. For example, in our case, in the case of the second committee, we can do it very easily with the OSCE Economic and Environmental Committee. By the way, last October, I had an opportunity to represent our assembly in the ministerial meeting from the second dimension in Vienna, and I have discussions with the chairperson of the OSCE Economic and Environmental Committee, and we had an agreement that it could be even better to have some joint event together in order to send the right signal that the OSCE institutions are together and they are working for the best interests of the OSCE values and the principles. Another thing, Mr. President, I want to thank particularly to your initiative that you brought up for the first time different regional mechanisms or informal groups such as the Mediterranean Forum, or the Silk Road Forum, Arctic Partners, Transatlantic Platforms, and Youth Network together, and you are keen enough to, let's say, expand the cooperation and to strengthen the cooperation or to strengthen the activities within this platform. This is really very much important. As you know, the Silk Road Group is being actively engaging in many different areas, particularly when it comes to connectivity and economic cooperation. I think maybe Roberto remembers very well, and the other long-served members of the Assembly remembers very well that in the past we had the tradition to organize the spring conference, dedicated particularly to the second dimension. I think it is the right time to revitalize or to restore this tradition. I do suggest that it could be, let's say, a thematic area that we have in Silk Road Group or the other second dimension platform. I think we have to put in regular calendar of our activities. I do suggest, Mr. President, to consider this proposal very carefully. And the last point is about the holding our event in an observer country. It is a very good idea. You put concrete deadline or the time frame in each 4 years. Maybe some of our colleagues again remember that when we had the last our event outside of OSCE member countries in an observer, it was Morocco, if I don't mistake, it was in 2019. And I know how it was difficult to come into conclusion about holding this important conference or the event outside of the OSCE member countries. But if we could, let's say, set up a kind of criteria about the political, let's say, preferences or the predictability of the issue and the topic that is important for the region, or we can also put the criteria such as, for example, how the country and the parliament is ready to host such events of OSCE. I think we can, of course, continue the other criteria, but my idea is to have some very predictable and smooth process in order to handle this issue. So this is something that I wanted to share with you, but again, Mr. President, I appreciate your work, leadership, and I very much appreciate that you brought up such a broad issue of the future activities of the Assembly. I think we have to continue, of course, not just limited with our one discussion in the Standing Committee. I think in upcoming events or the statutory meetings, we have to discuss all the other issues that you put in your calendar or the action plan. Thank you very much again, and I am looking forward to close the cooperative in those areas that I mentioned here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guliev, and just would like to add one thing on what you said, because you mentioned many topics. I would like to say thank you to the International Secretariat, because this action plan and this government paper is completed with a huge work of data that you can have access to during the session, and also the Secretary General will do an explanation. I think we took some decisions on the basis of this data that it was collected and summarized since 1992. So now we have taken some decisions on the data that the team collected, and I think if you go through this document, you will be extremely surprised of the evolution of the organization, but let's say just in figures, just taking into account the figures and along the years. So now I would like to give the floor to Madam Kugler from Austria, head of delegation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. A big thank you also in my name as a vice president. I'm not head of delegation, that's my colleague here next to me. But we would together like to thank the delegation of Turkey to put this together. We also find this room is very impressive, and it's great to be here with all of you. Also a big thank you to the International Secretariat for all the work that was poured into this. Now, Mr. President, you have highlighted in your statement today, but also in your action plan, how essential the OSCE missions are and how important it is that the Parliamentary Assembly works closely with the governmental side of the OSCE. And I would like to underline, if we look into the history of Europe, and now we are celebrating 50 years of the OSCE, that in these 50 years, Europe and the OSCE region has become a different place. And the OSCE and the OSCE missions have played a remarkable role in transforming Europe to a better place. You know, in 1975, there were many dictatorships in the OSCE regions. Human rights did not play the role they play today. I was 2 weeks ago in Tajikistan, and I visited the OSCE presence there, and I was very impressed by the work they did. But we see that today it is difficult for these field presences to be upheld because of budgetary problems and because of the divisions that we see. And the topic of our conference, to revive multilateralism, really is related to this. So I would like to underline how important it is that the Parliamentary Assembly and all of us back the OSCE missions through our parliamentary work. This is about creating visibility. It's about bringing the OSCE in our parliamentary discussions, and it is about talking to our own governments to secure the funding that is necessary to uphold the important work that is done through the field presences of OSCE. And I think, as Mr. President, you said you want to connect the Parliamentary Assembly more closely to the governmental side. I think it is essential that the work of the OSCE governmental side is presented at our meetings, but also that our members, the members of parliaments that are with the Parliamentary Assembly have a possibility of going to see the field presences, because once you see one, you will have a very different understanding of why the OSCE is so important and why and how it was possible over the last decades to make such a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I want to apologize because, of course, Secretary, the head of the delegation is Martin, so I want to apologize for that. The second thing is that I totally agree with you, and I think this is not on my credit, it's on the credit of Pia Kauma, the former president, who started work on the ground, visiting the missions of the OSCE. And I think what you said is totally, you know, to the point. And I think we paid this visit to Bosnia and Herzegovina 2 weeks ago, and I think the field work of the OSCE is amazing, but also it's obvious that they are suffering from a lack of budget. And then the answer is that as parliamentarians, you have to push our governments to increase the budgets and to full let's say, the operationality of the organization, which is in the end key. So I totally agree. I would like to give the floor to Paweł Zalewski from Poland.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to thank Turkish delegation for organizing this wonderful session in Istanbul. And I would like also to support you, Mr. President, in your work, in what you do, in your ideas to increase field missions and increase visibility of our assembly. That's absolutely important, especially in a very turbulent time. We are here. But I would like, first of all, to react on what was said by our colleague from Belarus, who stressed the importance of dialogue, diplomacy, and peace. And I would like to encourage him to support what you are trying to do since many years to free political prisoners, including Mr. Poczobut, to stop supporting Russia in its aggression against Ukraine. It's also important to know that Belarus, as a matter of fact, supported Russian incursion of Russian drones into Poland 2 months ago. So Belarus plays and can play a key role in securing peace in Europe. But what is important is action, not words, and definitely not lies. Not lies which we have heard some minutes before. So please be consequent if you call for peace and if you call for democracy, free political prisoners, and stop supporting Russia in its aggression against neighbors. Thank you.
So thank you very much for your words, and we have closed the debate. And I would like to underscore this idea of not lying among us, the idea of lies that you mentioned, because we have a lot of side events, a lot of sessions in which we discuss about how we can prevent disinformation, when we can prevent this confusion of words. And so I thank you for the intervention. And now I would like to go to the next point, because also we have to talk about our budget, about the figures. So I would like to give the floor to Johan Bowser, who is the treasurer today, of course, and for the next months and for the next years. And I would like to give you the floor, Johan. And thank you very much for your work and for your commitment to have the better budget possible in the organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and thank you also for your very active approach since during your mandate as President. So, colleagues and dear friends, let me begin by expressing my appreciation for the trust you have placed in me to serve as your treasurer. Since our annual session in Porto, the OSCE has remained highly active and visible, despite the challenging financial climate. Through the various activities of the Assembly, including the efforts of the Parliamentary Support Team for Ukraine, we have reinforced our commitment to dialogue and multilateral engagement. As we are entering the 2025-2026 financial year, it is important to reflect on the budgetary realities surrounding our organization. They can be summarized in 3 parts. First, an increased level of activities in the Assembly. Secondly, the continued absence of the Russian Federation's assessed contributions, now totaling over 1 million euros. And thirdly, a zero nominal growth budget, which could constitute a challenge when taking into account inflation and rising operational costs. The increased level of activities is a positive sign of our conviction and engagement as OSCE parliamentarians. However, when added together, these 3 components amount to a challenge. The 2025 and 2026 budget, adopted in Porto, reflects the principle of zero nominal growth. This means that we are operating within the same budgetary ceiling as last year, despite increasing demands and prices. It is important to note that sustained efforts will be needed for the Assembly to meet its objectives within its budgetary framework. The signal that I have received from the Standing Committee is that election monitoring, statutory meetings, and the Assembly's core political work are prioritized. During the coming financial year, it will be my primary responsibility to ensure that these demands are integrated in the budget proceedings. I look forward to work closely together with President Pedro João Pons Sampietro in this regard. Since the annual session in Porto, I have visited the International Secretariat, which provided an opportunity to review the financial performance of the current fiscal year and discuss the preparations for the upcoming budget and auditing cycle. The external audit, which again examines both our financial statements and performance, has been commenced, and the final report will be presented to the Standing Committee at the winter meeting in February. The work has also been initiated to implement the Porto Declaration and the resolution on securing the stability of the Parliamentary Assembly's financial situation. In line with these recommendations, clarifications will be made to our financial policies and amendments to the rules of procedures considered to modernize the current scale of contributions and clarify procedures regarding non-payment from member states. We are also making strides on, as already been mentioned, the multilingualism based on the Porto Declaration and the work of the internal working group. While these efforts are advancing, additional support will be required to fully realize this ambition. Let me also acknowledge the valuable role of extra budgetary contributions. I wish to particularly highlight the Luxembourg delegation's significant earmarked support for activities in Southeast Europe. They include interparliamentary forums in Greece and Rome, country visits to Serbia and Moldova, and most recently, the OSCE visit to Bosnia and Herzegovina. I also want to thank the Swiss delegation for its general extra budgetary contribution, which provided flexible support across our program. These contributions are powerful examples of how targeted support delivers meaningful results in the Assembly. Turning to election observation, our Assembly's crown jewel, 2024 and 2025 was an intense year. We deployed missions to 8 elections in 6 countries, including Moldova, Georgia, Uzbekistan, the United States, Albania, and Romania. The US mission alone mobilized 167 observers, the largest in our history. But these missions came at a cost. The pre-audited figures show that election observation costs significantly exceeded the budget last year. And as a result of the zero nominal growth budget, the level of financial resources allocated for election observation has remained unchanged from the previous year, despite a continued rise in operational costs and anticipated demand. These are circumstances that will be considered in the implementation of the current budget and for the 2026-2027 budget proposal. Looking ahead, we are preparing for our upcoming statutory meetings in Vienna, Copenhagen, The Hague, and Andorra in 2026. I extend heartfelt thanks to the Dutch Parliament and the General Council of Andorra for their generous support. We are also seeking a host for the 2027 annual session, and I warmly encourage delegations to come forward early and talk with me and the Secretary General about this important matter. In conclusion, I want to thank the Turkish delegation for organizing this event and to all participating states for their support, financially and politically. I extend my gratitude to the Secretary General, Roberto Montella, the Deputy Secretary General, Gustavo Payares, and the entire Secretariat staff for their dedication and stewardship. As Treasurer, I consider it's my responsibility to listen to demands from the Standing Committee and from the Member States, and to make sure that the budget is tailored for the Assembly's needs and objectives. I am eager to receive any comments and guidance from the Standing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. And before giving the floor for comments and questions, I just would like to again say thank you to you for your work. Also, of course, to all delegation and all parliaments for the support. Also, a big thank you to the delegation of Austria and Denmark for the support to the offices in Copenhagen and in Vienna. Of course, thank you to Germany and other countries for and Italy, of course, for seconding staff. But I also would like to say, because it's important to underscore what Johan said, that if we want to observe more, and I really, one of my desires and wishes to observe all the electoral campaigns that we are having in our region. For that, we need to increase our budget, because in terms of operations, today we cannot cover all the events that will be, let's say, happening in 2026. So just let's think together how we can do it, how we can back all these elections. And of course, again, thank you to the Turkish delegation for organizing this event. And now I think I have the head of the delegation of France who wants to take the floor. Monsieur de Milly.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Tout à l'heure, nos collègues biélorusses ont rappelé et insisté sur l'esprit d'Helsinki et notre volonté commune de résoudre les conflits par la diplomatie. Je suis d'accord avec eux, mais je souhaite faire deux remarques, ou presque deux réserves. La première, c'est que le dire c'est bien, mais le faire c'est mieux. Et ça me rappelle d'ailleurs une phrase du philosophe humaniste Montaigne qui disait que c'est une belle harmonie quand le faire et le dire vont ensemble. Et j'espère qu'ils entendront ce message. Et la deuxième remarque, c'est que la diplomatie doit effectivement être privilégiée face aux armes, mais la diplomatie a un coût. Et donc je reviens sur les propos de Monsieur le Trésorier à propos du non-versement de la Russie de sa contribution depuis 4 ans, qui a généré un manque à gagner de 1 million d'euros. L'organisation de l'OSCE a fait des efforts diététiques au niveau budgétaire, puisque le budget est plus ou moins stabilisé depuis Porto, même si ses activités sont en expansion, et vous l'avez rappelé tout à l'heure. D'où un appel de plus en plus régulier à des contributions exceptionnelles et volontaires. Je pense, et je parle au nom de la délégation française, qu'il est vraiment urgent et important d'enclencher une réflexion pour rééquilibrer les participations des pays. Un effort doit être légitimement effectué, selon moi, par certains pays qui, depuis leur adhésion, et je siège dans cette maison depuis presque 25 ans maintenant, donc certains pays qui, depuis leur adhésion à notre organisation internationale, se sont développés et dont les contributions sont restées pour le moins symboliques. Alors je sais bien que nous n'avons pas le pouvoir de moderniser la ventilation financière, mais je pense qu'on a le pouvoir de demander son évolution.
Merci, Monsieur de Milly. Johan, you want to take the floor?
Thank you to the delegate from the French delegation for raising this issue. Yes, we have a huge challenge regarding our budget, as mentioned, with the zero nominal growth budget, but thanks to extra budgetary contributions, we can manage a little bit more, because at the same time we see a higher demand on activities, election observations, and field visits, and so on. And that is, of course, very positive, but we need to be very open about that we have problems with the budget when Russia is not paying their contribution, and also that the budget that was adopted in Porto was a zero nominal one. And I totally agree that we need to have a look through the scales and the contributions, and we have worked on that the smaller countries that pay very little, that they can pay a little bit more, and some of them decided to do so. But I also encourage more extra budgetary contributions, of course, but also that we need to have a look through the scales of contributions, because it hasn't been changed for a very long time. And I myself put a declaration on this in a resolution on this in the Porto meeting, and it has been handed over to Pascal Alisad, who is leading the group of rules of procedure. So I hope we can continue this discussion, but I think it's important that you as a standing committee have this information and that we can continue the discussion. So I'm open for discussion, and please don't hesitate to approach me during the meeting if you have some ideas on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan, for your comments. Anybody else wants to intervene? No? So I would like to go to the next point, in which we should discuss the report of the chair of the subcommittee on the rules of procedures. And unfortunately, Monsieur Pascal Alizard is not here. He could not travel due to the work in the Senate of France. So he just shared the report with you. And I would like to mention what he told to us. His report highlights a number of topics that the Rules Subcommittee is expected to engage with in the coming weeks and months. And I appreciate that some of the topics on the agenda emerge from issues that I have raised in my proposed governance paper and action plan. Now, I think it's a little bit premature to discuss the specific rule change that are planned if the governmental paper is adopted, but I think it's important that we are all aware of the topics that we have to take under consideration, and the group and the committee on the rules of procedure will work on. Most of the topics are of technical nature, but others are more structural, and then they would, I think they deserve a long discussion and reflection. So I think we'll assist to a work of the Rules of Procedures Committee in the coming months, and then they will have an outcome, and I hope that Monsieur Alizard will be able to present it to us, I hope in Vienna or in the next summer session. So in any case, there is going to be a meeting of the subcommittee of the Rules of Procedure tomorrow at lunch break, so if you have any questions now, and also tomorrow there will be time for that. So I open the floor. If there is any request, any consideration, if not, tomorrow at lunchtime there is a meeting that can be useful for all of you. So if there is any request, I would like to give the floor to the Secretary General, Roberto Montella, that wants to share with you the report today. Thank you, Roberto, for your work, and to the whole team for this interesting report that you're going to deliver today to the Standing Committee.
Thank you very much, dear Perry, Mr. President. You have often said during these weeks that this is your 100th day of service as president, and if you read the activities of the president, they are impressive in 100 days. It just triggered my idea to say that this is the 50th time that I report to the Assembly in its different articulation, the Bureau, the plenary, the Standing Committee. And every time I have to report so that the members can scrutinize the activity of the Secretariat, I have this dilemma, you know, because a written report is distributed. So what do I do? Do I read the report? It's long, there is too much, maybe you've read it already. Or do I make it a little bit more interesting in highlighting few aspects? And when you want to do that, you know, you have to discuss, do you want to put maybe the nuclear stuff first and then softer at the end, or start soft and end the nuclear if you want to get the attention of members? Today I only have nuclear stuff to tell you, so I think I might say it with a softer tone, but I have lots of things that I would like to bring your attention to. Well, first of all, Mr. President, thank you very much for your governance paper. As you underlined, this has been a work ongoing since Pia Kalma's presidency. We've had several meetings of the Bureau, also extended Bureau, to discuss a little bit the identity of this Assembly. This Assembly has gone through a big transformation in the last 10 years. Yeah, I've distributed this little leaflet that you will see the amount of activities and the amount of engagement of members throughout the last 10 years. Some colleagues have told me, Roberto, you have opened the Pandora's box. And I think I feel responsible for the increase of activity. When I was first elected Secretary General, I said that I wanted to see an assembly who not only does statutory meetings, election observation, but is present on the field, is present on the ground when things happen. And I think you have really captured that spirit, Mr. President, which is also the result of all your consultations with delegations. And the numbers prove it. Members want to be present. Members want to engage, want to have the possibility to be on the terrain, be able to contribute concretely. Of course, this requires a lot of activity, a lot of work. I've seen yesterday how engaged we were in discussing a possibility of elections in Ukraine, and for 5 hours members were engaged on that. We had a very interesting discussion also on what to do with Georgia and whether to engage or whether to stay out of that dossier. The general spirit of the Assembly is that members want to engage. The numbers prove it exponentially. If you see at the statistics how many members have participated to our activities. Yet, as the treasurer, and I thank Johan for your great work, and Gustavo and Stephen for managing the finances of this assembly. So yet the finances are reducing. We have an increase of activities, but a reduction of the finances also in nominal growth. This means that we have to cover that gap. So far, the gap has been covered by the work of my colleagues at the Secretariat. We've requested more from them. We have, in the last 10 years, also hired colleagues who were before research fellows, who have become junior professional. But after some years, they're no longer junior professionals, they're senior professionals. But this has worked because we had kind of internally managed to ask more from colleagues. But in the long run, this is, as also the Secretary General of the governmental side said, this is unsustainable. And I think we have to find alternative sources of financing. And here I would like to thank again, because it's always good to thank those who contribute more, but I'd like to thank Luxembourg, Austria and Denmark for hosting our Secretariat, Italy and Germany for also seconding staff, and Switzerland for recently also supporting us with extra budget contributions. I think this is also something that we have to explore with other delegations. And another way to contribute is also to come forth, as you said, with applications to host our events. We have for next year covered 2026, but we don't have a host for the annual session in 2027 and 2028 and 2029. So I hope that during these days we can approach some of you with the idea of coming to host the annual session in the future. President Pere also instructed the Secretariat to produce a little booklet with statistics. It's been distributed to you twice. In the statistics, you will see a little bit how positions of responsibilities in this assembly have been distributed in those positions that require a presidential discretion, namely nominating leaders of election observation missions or special representatives, and those who are elected positions. And you will see, of course, that there are some countries that are more represented than others, and I appreciate your effort, Mr. President, in making this assembly a little bit more plural, a little bit more diverse, and gender balanced. And as gender balance is something that we've always taken very seriously in this assembly, I must underscore that since you've become president, you've made 16 nominations for special representative, and they have been extremely balanced, 8 and 8, and 4 nominations for election observation. You've nominated 3 women and 1 man. So on these, you have, let's say, stuck to your word and acted accordingly. But we, of course, have to consider that this is done in the framework of an assembly which is, by default, more represented by men, because the membership is decided by each national delegation, and on that there is no way the president or the secretariat can influence. So each delegation, so we have around 70% men, 30% women represented in the entire assembly. But notwithstanding these figures, you've managed to nominate a leadership which is extremely gender balanced. The activities that we have carried out since Porto are all listed in my report. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just would like to underscore the very important visit that President Pere led in Kiev, meeting with Zelensky. That was, again, representing the entire assembly and representing the impeccable track record this assembly has on the dossier of Ukraine. I think all our declarations since 2022, but also those previous to 2022 after the illegal annexation of Crimea, I think the assembly has always been on track, on record, being calling spade to a spade, not lukewarming our message, and I'm very proud of this work. Also, you underscored the field activities. I'd like to thank the members also who were in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Some of you also, I think Eugenio Zoffili went to meet also with the soldiers who serve there. I think it's very nice for us to show to the local stakeholders on how we engage and how we pay interest in the OSCE field activities. And as we touch upon that issue, I'd like to say something because we went also to see Srebrenica, and this was, for me, a very touchy moment. Srebrenica is a place where there was a genocide in 1995. But at the entrance, some of you saw it, of this memorial, there was a sign that says, "The failure of the international community." And I have served my entire career in the international community. I've never worked for Italy, let's say. I've always worked for the international community in all its articulation, OSCE in the field, in the Secretariat, now in the Parliamentary Assembly. And I've always looked at how the recipients of our work, how what I call the end users of the work of the OSCE or the international community perceive our work. And this is very important because when we make these field visits, when we go and talk to local stakeholders, they are very smart in spotting whether we really care about what we do, whether we really put our heart in what we do. And here I would like to really thank the delegations who were part of the Bosnia mission, who visited Bosnia together with you, because I could see a lot of interest, a lot of engagement, a lot of very sharp questions and empathy shown to the local stakeholders. The same that we do with the Migration Committee or with the other committees. And I think this is where, if we are realistic about what activities can this Parliamentary Assembly do and what is the outreach of parliamentarians, of course, we will not be able, unfortunately, to be the ones who decide whether the conflict in Ukraine will be solved in one way or another. We can contribute, or in other places. But at least one place where we can contribute and where we can be very effective is that when we engage on the ground, when we meet local stakeholders, we show interest, we participate, we show empathy, and of course, try to support the local stakeholders with a lot of attention. And I think this is very much appreciated by the people we visit, be it on migration, be it on this kind of field activities. I'd like to just make a quick comment about what was said by the delegate of the Belarusian delegation, because you touched upon the issue of dialogue. And you know how much I have sometimes also taken heat on this issue by promoting dialogue and saying, of course, that this is an assembly that has to build bridges and talk also to those we have disagreements with. And I formally support that. But I also say that we have to make sure that this dialogue is on the basis of the Helsinki Final Act and on the Decalogue. So we have to have that in mind. Of course, we have to have dialogue, but dialogue is also, if you are at breach with the commitments of this organization, this has to be underscored, because we cannot just lukewarm our message and say, okay, let's talk to each other and let's forget what has happened. So I think dialogue, yes, and I'm a strong promoter of that, but on the basis of the Helsinki Final Act and on the principles of this organization. One last word on the Finnish, not Finnish, the report, but the Finland chair. You've seen some letters I've distributed, and you've been wondering why I'm distributing letters. Now, I have worked with many Finnish leaders. I've had two presidents who were from Finland, late Ilkka Kanerva and Pia Kauma, and I've actually, in my career in the OSCE, served three chair of the OSCE, Ilkka Kanerva himself, Alexander Stubb, who is now president of Finland, and the current chair of Finland. And I must say that I have always had very good cooperation with the chair. This year, and as you know, I'm normally very honest with my comments. We've had some challenges. I am a little bit disappointed that we didn't have the chair coming to Vienna, didn't come to the meeting in Porto. We've also rearranged sometimes the agenda in order to accommodate the request of the chair, but this has not been met with the same level of cooperation. And I must say, Vice President Gudrun mentioned, and some of you mentioned also the cooperation with the organization executive structure, with the secretariat, with the chair. This is excellent, but of course we require also, and we expect that the chair shows respect. Next week, Mr. President, or in 2 weeks, you will be in Vienna speaking to the Ministerial Council. There will be the chair of the organization who represents the governmental side, one pillar of this organization, and then you. You will be the second speaker who represents the parliamentary dimension, let's say the democratic oversight of this organization. And this has to be underscored, and I think as Secretary General, I have a responsibility to kind of raise the flag a little bit when I see that the respect for the Parliamentary Assembly is a little bit lowering down. The entire third committee leadership was in Warsaw for the traditional human dimension conference that they do every October. None of them had a chair around the table. The president who addressed this event was relegated as the last speaker after the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Finland and Poland had left the room. This is a breach of past practices. Always the president has spoken second after the CIO. So I would like that this is also clear with you. These letters were kind of a little bit of an alarm bell. I know with Switzerland we will not have this problem next year. We have already spoken to the Swiss delegation. The chair will probably visit our bureau meeting in Vienna. So the best is yet to come, let's say, with future chairs. But this year I would like to underscore, especially because we've had a great relationship with the Finland, and Pia Kalman's leadership was a great leadership for our assembly. So this is not, of course, addressed to the parliamentary assembly of the Finnish delegation, but both to the current chair. And at the end, I have to say thank you very much to the Turkish delegation for this great organization. Thank you very much for hosting us in such a glamour way, and really for setting up this meeting. And as we are looking for chair for the future annual sessions, maybe we will knock on your door again. Thank you very much. Last word, Pere, thank you very much for the way you have conducted your leadership, very inclusive with all the members, very inclusive with the Secretariat. We very much appreciate, all the colleagues at the Secretariat very much appreciate to be able to bring their ideas, bring their concerns, and then at the end of the day, you are the, how they say in the US, the bucket stops here. You make the decision, we follow your decisions, but it's nice to also interact with you in a very, let's say, dynamic and a pluralistic way. And thank you very much to all my colleagues at the International Secretariat, Gustavo, Andreas, all those who make sure that this can happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roberto, for your words, for your report. I don't know if there is anybody that would like to take the floor. So maybe the only remark that I would like to do is that I think there was an extremely important event this year in August 1st to celebrate, to commemorate 50 years Helsinki Final Act, and I think the Finnish chairmanship organized it very well, and I think we all felt really happy to be part of this event, which was crucial. And in any case, I think that we need more Helsinki events, even every year, because it's more needed than ever. But anyway, now I would like to go to the next step. We had an election in Moldova, and we appointed Paula Cardoso as special coordinator and Limea as head of mission, and I would like that Paula Cardoso debriefs us on the elections in Moldova, which, by the way, were really critical, and in all the meetings that we have had in the last weeks, Moldova was on the top of the agenda because the influence, external influence, cyber attacks, hybrid war, So I think it's very important, Paula, that you debrief us and you comment on all these topics. And thank you again to you and Limea, Wickman, and of course to all the members that attended the elections, the observation. And again, thank you for your work and for your engagement. And in a couple of weeks, we have another election in Kyrgyzstan, so I hope that it will be also a success. Paola, thank you very much, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. I am pleased to present to you a report on our Assembly's election observation mission to the 28th September parliamentary elections in Moldova, which I had the honor to lead as special coordinator appointed by the OSCE chairperson in office. Let me first express my gratitude to the government of the Republic of Moldova for the invitation to observe its electoral process in accordance with its OSCE commitments. I would like also to thank the very qualified and professional team of ODIHR observers led by Ambassador Gillian Sturck, as well as my colleagues from the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe and the European Parliament, with whom we closely cooperated throughout the mission. A special word of thanks goes to my dear Assembly colleague Linnea Wickman, who led the OSCE delegation for excellent and fruitful cooperation, as well as the OSCPA team that support our work in Moldova. A very special thanks to Stephanie Kolchanova for her valuable insights. The International Election Observation Mission to the Moldova parliamentary elections comprised a total of 391 observers from 50 countries, including 245 long-term and short-term observers deployed by the ODIHR, as well as a 24-member delegation from the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe and a 14-member delegation from the European Parliament. I would like to particularly commend our Assembly's strong contribution to this mission, as we have deployed a delegation of 108 observers in total, among which 79 members of the Parliament are from 34 OSCE countries. Our delegation's observation efforts on election day span several cities, including Chisinau, Comrat, Orei, Soroca, and Resina, to only name a few. This high interest is displayed by members of the Parliament from so many countries in these elections is a clear manifestation of how much we care for Moldova, for its people, and for its future. Our statement of preliminary findings and conclusions is available on our website for your reference. Through these parliamentary elections, the people of Moldova showed deep democratic commitment. In the context of a highly polarized political environment, deep divisions around the country's geopolitical orientation, and an unprecedented level of hybrid threats coming from the Russian Federation, the people of Moldova participated in the electoral process and made their voices heard. Our general assessment of the elections was the following. We found that the 2025 parliamentary elections in Moldova were competitive and offered a clear choice among political alternatives, but that the process was marred by serious cases of foreign interference, illicit financing, cyber attacks, and widespread disinformation. We welcomed that the legal framework was strengthened to protect against election corruption and provides a sound basis of conducting democratic election. However, we highlighted that legislative changes shortly before the elections impact legal certainty. We assessed that the elections administration managed preparations professionally and efficiently. However, some decisions along partisan lines by the Central Election Commission on contentious issues brought into question its impartiality. We also pointed out that decisions in the 2 days before elections on the ineligibility of two parties based on allegations of illicit funding limited their right to effective remedy. We found that in a highly polarized environment, contestants campaigned freely throughout the country. Despite law enforcement efforts, extensive vote buying schemes to influence voters were credibly identified. Extensive disinformation on social networks, partisan coverage in most media, and limited investigative and analytical reporting hindered voters' ability to make an informed decision. We found that election day was well prepared, orderly and transparent, and the process was assessed positively by the mission's observers. In addition to the preliminary statement, of which I now share the introduction, the ODIHR will publish a final report in the coming months, which I encourage you to consult as well. The report will include a number of recommendations to address the shortcomings observed, which we call on the Moldovan authorities to implement. I would like to conclude by reiterating the readiness of our Assembly to assist in this process and by thanking once again all the observers who took part in this important mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, Paula, for your commitment and for your comments. And I think we have two requests for taking the floor. Julian Lorenz, head of delegation of Romania, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. First of all, I want to congratulate Mr. Cardoso for the excellent work she has done in Moldova. Beyond this report, we need to design how the reports we write based on observation missions, the analysis we do, the field work, really have an impact on the countries that are going to have elections. I think that we can all conclude that is a pattern in these elections, a pattern of hybrid attacks, of fake news, of inauthentic behavior on social media, and possible vulnerabilities when we talk about democracy. You have to think that the Moldovan authorities warn us that would be cyber attacks from the Russian Federation targeting the CAC platform, the government's cloud services, and automated process assurance systems, as well as some polling stations in the diaspora. For example, on the day of the election, there was at the same time attack from several countries. We are talking about over 16 million sessions generated, designed to simulate real traffic and bypass protection systems. All these attempts were detected and blocked by the competent authorities, so this is the reason that I want to congratulate the government of the Republic of Moldova. But as I said before, there's a pattern when we talk about the election in Moldova, when we talk about the election in Romania, when we talk about the election in Georgia. From my point of view, I believe that all the work done in each election observation session, which is very good, can be used much better in the future, especially in the countries where there will be election. A tangle and cross-check of data between reports, finding common patterns, understanding the phenomenon itself, an analysis of how the authorities of each state acted and how can other countries learn from their experiences. In my opinion, the exchange of good practices between states is essential in preventing future vulnerabilities in the electoral process. I believe that it is our role to prepare much better the countries that are preparing for election by marking some key moments for each campaign, possible vulnerabilities, because it is obvious that the way electoral campaigns are conducted today is profoundly different from 10 years ago. And I think we must be prepared, not reactive. And I'm sorry to say it because, okay, I'm from Romania, I was in Moldova, but I still believe that countries like Russia have nothing to do with the values that the OSCE defends, because all the attacks we talk about were from Russia. So this is, of course, my point of view. This country is not welcome in this organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Julian, and I cannot agree more on what you said on the new trends of the electoral observations. And I think you already mentioned it in Porto. I think we had many discussions with different delegations that we should be able to capitalize what we produce as, let's say, hybrid cyber attacks, misinformation, disinformation is concerned. And I think we have been working in the last 3 months trying to figure out how to do it, and also we are working with your DIR, but I think it's a common reflection. It's not only my task. I think we have a lot of information, a lot of data, and we have to be able to work with that. And I really take the opportunity after your intervention to tell you that let's think together how we can do it and how we can create a sort of task force or whatever, I don't know, in order to have the capacity to better understand this phenomenon, which is already everywhere, and we had already a long discussion yesterday also in the session on Ukraine. Because one of the key issues of the discussion yesterday in Ukraine is that, okay, even if the war, the full-scale invasion will be over, then they will still have to face with the B side of this war, which is the cyber attack war, the misinformation war, etc., which is also a geopolitical risk. So I think I really welcome your comments, and I would like to pass the floor to the head of the Irish delegation, John Hart, and then after that, Farah Karimi will close, and I see the member of Andorra also wanting to take the floor. So, dear John Lahart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and congratulations on your election, and I wish you the very best in the period ahead in office. My points are very brief, and it is on the election observation. It was my first election observation mission. I would like to confirm what the rapporteur has reported to the conference, that from my perspective, election day was particularly well organised. I was with a very strong team. I was very struck by the commitment of the OSCE team that were present, the thoroughness of the preparation that had been engaged in for all the observers who came along, the debriefing session that took place immediately after it. I was particularly struck, Mr. President, by the overwhelming involvement of women in the local polling stations, the pride all the local people took in welcoming us, in assisting us in our observation duties, and how professionally they undertook the work in their polling stations, but particularly struck by the pride in their work. The final 2 points I want to make is I represent and lead the Irish delegation, and Ireland is one of the oldest continuous democracies in Europe. We had a presidential election very recently, and even our own presidential election was open to the threats that we would normally associate with emerging democracies and vulnerable democracies. Disinformation, cyber attacks, particularly across social media, pretty intensive action. So one of the things I have done, having listened to the Secretary General and having listened to the budgetary report, I will be going back and through the medium of parliamentary questions asking our own government and my own ministers to look again at the budgetary piece, that electoral threats are now not confined just to emerging and vulnerable democracies, but they threaten all of us, and it's in all our interests to cooperate and work together. And if you are establishing any kind of a task force, certainly you would have the support of the Irish delegation in doing that. Thank you.
I really appreciate your words, and I think I will link it to what the French colleague has said, because he said that elections and the operationality of this organization has a cost. I think, of course, it has a cost, but in the end, it's an investment on democracy and on preserving democracy, not only abroad, but also at home. And I totally share with you that the new virus that we have to live with is the virus of disinformation. In the end, it's not only about abroad or at home. It's about preserving democracy worldwide. So I totally agree. And yeah, we are thinking how we could capitalize what we produce. And I totally agree with you. It's also, I think my first observation mission was in Moldova. And I also was surprised because I think it's all very well organized and from the inside and also on the ground. So thank you again. And I think coming back to the parliament and asking for more funding, it's not a sort of caprice, as the French say, but a duty that we have to do to invest in our democracies. So Farah, you had the floor as you requested before. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to start by thanking, of course, our Turkish hosts for organizing this wonderful session here in the beautiful city of Istanbul. Çok teşekkürler. On this topic, as we actually said the whole day till now, this is really a very important part of our work, election observation missions. And as colleagues before me already mentioned, elections are becoming more and more challenging, organizing elections, no matter where. And the polarization in the societies almost everywhere is huge. We just had our own national elections in the Netherlands. The result of the election is a picture that maybe 10 years ago none of us could really imagine that. Quite fragmented. None of the political parties is representing even 20% of the population. That means we will need at least 4 parties to make a coalition. The largest party, the difference between the largest party and the second party is 30,000. So you can imagine that in such a situation, every single vote counts. Every single vote counts. And the integration of election process becomes really even more important than it has always been. Now, in Moldova, we saw indeed a very challenging environment. We saw a very challenging election process. And I have to say, this is a little bit concerning for me, having seen many elections in the last years, that our maybe observations become also more and more politicized. And this is something that I think we have to really think about it. Integration of elections are under threat. What about integration of the observation missions? Are we happy when our friends win? And then we say, no, maybe the things were not so bad, so let's keep it a little bit, quiet. And when someone wins that we don't like, then the critics go sky high. And that will actually touch the integration of our observation missions. This is not only related to Moldova. I have seen it also in other places. And I would like actually to have a conversation about that. And maybe to broaden the conversation with actually inside our own Parliamentary Assembly, but also with the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, with European Parliament members. Actually, the members of European Parliament, when they participate, I always wonder, what is the agenda? What is the agenda? Because it is not always not politicized, to say it a little bit mild. So I would like really to have a conversation about that, and maybe we can have a small group continue talking about that, because this is the most important activity of our Parliamentary Assembly, and we have to preserve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Farah, anything the Secretary General would like to comment, and then I will give the floor to Paul Bartolomé, and then, he will close this point. Roberto, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much, Farah, for bringing that point. I wasn't going to speak also in this phase, but you brought a very, very important issue, which is keeping, you call it integration, I think you mean integrity, the integrity and credibility of election observation activities. Our Treasurer mentioned this is the crown jewel of our activities. Indeed it is. A lot of members participate in this by spending time also on pre-electoral visits, in deploying on the field, in providing a lot of information for the core team. It is indeed a trend, and it is worrying, the politicization of election observation missions. It is not a problem within the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, I must say, and I'm very proud of how the members of the Parliamentary Assembly conduct themselves when we observe elections. But we've seen a trend in recent elections, be it in Georgia or in Albania or in North Macedonia, where you have delegates from other sister organizations, let's say, the Council of Europe, the European Parliament, who by definition, they select the leadership of these election observation missions with a political, let's say, appointment. They say this election will be given to grouping A, this, or EPP, the next one to Socialists, the next one to ALDE. Let's call things what they are. This is, let's say, structurally it's like this. So when you have a party A assigned to an election in one country where the incumbent is maybe not the same as the leadership of that election observation missions, somehow they come into this mission with the idea of being either very critical of the incumbent or very supportive of the opposition or vice versa, depending on who is at the helm of these other parliamentary delegations. We don't have this problem here in the Parliamentary Assembly because the President normally appoints on a basis of regional distribution, gender, yes, taking also a little bit into consideration the political families, but here the political families are not so rigid as they are in the Council of Europe and the European Parliament. But this does create a problem because we've seen a trend in recent elections where the leadership of the election observation missions of this sister organization came in the country with a clear idea of wanting either to be totally supportive of the government or totally critical, regardless of what was the reality. And for me, it was a shock because I've seen, normally we always say we trust the ODIHR judgment. And we've been in rooms where the ODIHR would say, this is what we have observed. This is our standards. This is how normally we judge these elections. And yet you had leaderships who would say, well, but we have to make it harsher or we have to make it softer, depending on who was speaking and who was the leadership in those respective countries. I think the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly here has to play a key role, which is to stick with the ODIHR, support the ODIHR work, which is credible, which has absolutely integrity in what they do, and try to let's say, diffuse this politicization of election observation missions, because then once you politicize and you, in the press, create a narrative, I have noticed in the last year that a narrative becomes the reality while what is written on the paper is totally different. But sometimes, you know, perceptions and reality become conflictual. So let's make sure that we don't politicize election observation missions, and let's make sure that we stick with the ODIHR and we support the ODIHR work as it is part of the OSCE. Thank you. Thank you, Farah, for bringing this up, but I think it's a conversation we need to keep on having.
Thank you very much, Roberto, and I'm going to give the floor to Paul, but don't forget what it was said during the briefings in the US elections. Perception is reality. This is one of the spin doctors who said that. Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, first of all, thank you, Mr. President, again for the impulse you have provided to this organization through the action plan you have presented to us. I think that it is a critical step forward for a more decisive and effective OCPA. Also, I'd like to take the opportunity to express my gratitude to the delegation of Turkey for this hospitality, and I wish you all the best in this autumn session. The purpose of my intervention, it is to say that I agree very much with the proposals put forward by my colleague from Romania and later by the president himself. Election observation missions have become both a fundamental and also one of the most visible parts of our organization. In this regard, there is no doubt that over the last years, the OSCE has gathered a tremendous amount of information about parliamentary and presidential elections all over the world. And as Mrs. Farah Karimi just said, and I agree very much, the challenges that our elections are facing are growing increasingly, especially because of the proliferation of disinformation practices with devastating effects for our democracies. For this reason, and considering all the previous work done by this organization over the last years, I think that we must capitalize this transition and create a new task force in charge of election information observation. Not only to provide brand new data, but to exercise a leadership role through the creation of a kind of a manual in which we reflect about elections in contemporary politics and also on how to address the effects of disinformation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and as you know, I fully subscribe to this idea of creating a pool or a task force or, concentrating on our know-how. Just would like to tell you that we have exactly 70 minutes, more or less, before we ending the session, the standing committee, and we have a couple of important points. So now I know that we still have to debrief on several items as elections are concerned. So I would like to ask Farah Karimi to intervene on the points regarding Albania. There were elections, and she's going to debrief us on the recommendations made by ODIHR and on the points that she wants to share with us and underscore. So Farah, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The written report of actually Albania observation mission is admitted to the meeting. And I think it is important to actually, again, to emphasize what I said in my contribution. And I wanted actually to leave it here.
Thank you, Farah. And as you know, unfortunately, our colleague Lucia Potuchkova lost her seat recently in the elections, and so she's not anymore member of the Parliamentary Assembly. She cannot comment on the elections in Romania. So I would like to ask Kyriakos Hatchigami, if he's around, because I cannot see him, if we can intervene and take the floor and comment on the recommendation of the ODIHR for Romania. But I cannot see him. I don't know if he's around. Kyriakos. Oh. Okay. Eugenio, you're going to take the floor? Okay, you have the floor then. And also Farah is going to take the floor.
Grazie Presidente. Thank you, President. This is for the report for the election, Romanian election, okay? Ok, grazie. Grazie Presidente. Ci tengo a ringraziare la delegazione turca ovviamente per la splendida accoglienza e l'organizzazione. Ringrazio tutti i colleghi parlamentari turchi, in particolare il capodelegazione Selami Antinok, ma anche tutto lo staff guidato dalla splendida ECEM. Grazie. Grazie veramente di cuore, cari colleghi. Sono lieto di comunicarvi che è stata pubblicata la relazione finale dell'ODIHR sulle elezioni presidenziali ripetute tenutesi il 4 e il 18 maggio 2025 in Romania e ci tengo a ringraziare il Presidente Pia Kauma perché avevo chiesto personalmente attraverso una lettera l'osservazione di questo importante momento elettorale e la richiesta era stata accolta dal Presidente Kama e dal segretario Montella e dal segretariato ed è stato molto importante recarci a Bucarest. La relazione è disponibile nella cartella della nostra riunione autunnale sul sito web dell'ODIR. La relazione offre una valutazione completa del processo elettorale e una serie di raccomandazioni per rafforzare ulteriormente lo svolgimento delle elezioni in Romania, sostenendo gli sforzi volti ad allineare pienamente il quadro normativo agli impegni dell'OSCE e agli standard democratici internazionali. Sulla base dei risultati della nostra missione congiunta di osservazione elettorale limitata, la relazione sottolinea la necessità di rafforzare la chiarezza, la trasparenza, l'inclusività e l'integrità del processo elettorale. Tra le sue raccomandazioni chiave, l'ODIR chiede l'adozione di un codice elettorale unificato che copra tutti i tipi di elezioni, sviluppato attraverso un processo inclusivo e consultivo. Sottolinea inoltre la necessità di garantire la certezza giuridica e la stabilità, adottando emendamenti attraverso procedure parlamentari regolari con dibattito pubblico. Ulteriori raccomandazioni includono misure volte a promuovere la partecipazione delle donne alla vita politica e pubblica e a migliorare la trasparenza e l'inclusività nell'amministrazione delle elezioni, come l'apertura delle sessioni degli organi di gestione elettorale agli osservatori e la garanzia di una rappresentanza equilibrata di tutti i candidati. La relazione sottolinea inoltre l'importanza di salvaguardare il diritto di candidarsi alle elezioni attraverso criteri giuridici chiari e oggettivi. Essa chiede una maggiore supervisione delle campagne elettorali online, compresa una maggiore trasparenza nella pubblicità politica e la responsabilità delle piattaforme dei social media nella prevenzione di comportamenti online coordinati e non autentici, proteggendo al contempo il dibattito politico vero autentico. Raccomanda inoltre migliorare la trasparenza del finanziamento delle campagne elettorali, in particolare nella sfera online. Inoltre la relazione suggerisce di rivedere i requisiti relativi alle firme di sostegno per i candidati, migliorare l'accesso al voto delle minoranze, in particolare alle persone con disabilità, e garantire l'accessibilità dei seggi elettorali e l'informazione degli elettori nelle lingue minoritarie. Chiede inoltre norme più chiare sulle attività di campagna elettorale tra un turno e l'altro, una maggiore supervisione del finanziamento delle campagne elettorali e una maggiore equità e trasparenza dei media per garantire condizioni di parità. Queste raccomandazioni costituiscono una solida base per rafforzare ulteriormente la fiducia dell'opinione pubblica nel processo elettorale e garantire che le future elezioni in Romania si svolgano nel pieno rispetto dei principi dell'OSCE e degli standard internazionali. L'Assemblea parlamentare dell'OSCE ribadisce la sua disponibilità ad assistere la Romania in questi sforzi, in stretta collaborazione con l'ODIR e le altre istituzioni dell'OSCE. Infine desidero esprimere il mio sincero apprezzamento all'autorità e al popolo rumeno per la loro collaborazione e la calorosa ospitalità riservata alla nostra missione di osservazione elettorale nel maggio di quest'anno. Grazie Presidente.
Grazie caro Eugenio per il tuo rapporto. And again I would like to thank all the speakers reporting on the elections, and I would like to underline again that we will have an election in Kyrgyzstan before the end of the year. It will be the last one in this 2025. But again, I would like to underscore that if we want to observe more in 2026, I kindly ask you to think how we can increase the budget and how we can move forward on this. And then I think that Farah Karimi wants to take the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was a little bit confused when you actually gave me the word to talk about Albania, because I reported on Albania in Porto. And that was the reason for my confusion. But the point is that the final report is actually now available, because we have always the preliminary report, and now we have the final report. And if you allow me, I would like to actually mention a few points that the report actually has, and that is in relation to the recommendations. I think this is important to mention them. And the recommendations of, and especially the ODR highlights, in particular, the need to undertake a comprehensive reform of the electoral legal framework through an inclusive and consultative process, depoliticize the nomination procedures for lower-level election administration to ensure its stability and impartiality, prevent misuse of administrative resources to guarantee a genuinely level playing field for all contestants, and intensify voter education efforts on electronic voting to ensure all citizens can vote independently and confidentially. I think these are very important, actually, recommendations, and these recommendations are also aligned with our findings from the observation mission. And I just wanted actually to leave here and thank again, of course, the people and the authorities of Albania for actually supporting this and allowing us to do this observation mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Farah, and I understand the confusion because as I have the impression that we are running out of time, I'm trying to accelerate, and so I'm trying to go faster than night. But anyway, now I would like to move to the ad hoc committees. And the first thing that I would like to say is that I have to inform you that I appointed Mrs. Farah Karimi as chair of the ad hoc committee on migration, and also that I had appointed Mrs. Lucy Potukova to chair the parliamentary support team on Ukraine. But as I said before, she was not re-elected in the recent elections, in the Czech parliamentary elections. So to replace her, I appointed Ms. Sarah Hodgson from the UK as chair of the Ukraine task force. So I welcome her today as well. And I would like to start with the ad hoc committees, inviting Mr. Kamil Aydin to report on the work of the ad hoc committee on counterterrorism. So you have the floor. Kamil, thank you.
Thank you, President. Prior to presenting my report, I feel obliged to say a few words about the kind thanks we have received as the Turkish delegation so far. And we, honestly, it's a great pleasure, I would like to say that, to welcome and host you in Istanbul as the meeting point of the world. And we also hope that you will enjoy every single minute you spend in Istanbul. Thank you. Dear Mr. President, and dear Secretary General, and distinguished colleagues, it's my great honor to present the 24th report of the ad hoc Committee on Countering Terrorism, covering the period from our annual session in Porto last July to this autumn meeting in Istanbul. Building on the foundation established earlier this year, the committee has pursued a dual agenda, the one exploring emerging trends and the second one promoting the OSCE counterterrorism acquis through targeted initiative addressing, in particular, the misuse of new technologies and prevention of youth radicalization. The Porto session marked an important milestone with the adoption of our resolution on preventing youth radicalization through education and media and information literacy. Since then, we have worked to translate that commitment into practice while broadening cooperation with international partners. According to Europol's 2025 Terrorism Situation and Trend Report, numerous planned lone actor and small cell attacks in Europe were foiled, many of them inspired or facilitated online. The report highlights how extremist actors increasingly exploit AI-enabled propaganda, synthetic media, encrypted and decentralized platforms, complicating detection. The growing convergence between organized crime and terrorism, particularly through cyber-enabled financing, arms trafficking, and illicit trade, continues to pose a major security threat. Equally concerning is the rise of nihilistic extremism, that is to say, violence detached from coherent ideology, driven instead by alienation and online amplification of anger. Meanwhile, technological innovation continues to outpace legislation. The rise of AI-generated propaganda, deepfakes, and synthetic media is transforming the information landscape, eroding public trust and amplifying extremist narratives in an increasingly unregulated digital space. These dynamics confirm that counterterrorism today is inseparable from digital governance, youth protection, and technology ethics, an approach our Assembly has championed since Bucharest 2024. In this spirit, the Committee has advanced several initiatives. On 7th and 8th of October, the CCT participated in the United Nations Global Parliamentary Conference on Counterterrorism and the Prevention of Violent Extremism, held in Istanbul. The event gathered over 100 parliamentarians and experts contributing to the 2026 review of the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy. Debate centered on AI misuse, the terrorism organized crime nexus, oversight frameworks, and terrorism in conflict-affected areas. The committee shared the OSCPA's experience in promoting rights-compliant, technology-aware approaches and in advancing parliamentary engagement in the United Nations Strategy Review. We have also continued close cooperation with the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean to advance the implementation of our resolutions. In parallel, we have strengthened ties with the European Union and Interparliamentary Union. The 22nd meeting of the committee here in Istanbul reflects this momentum. This afternoon, we will hear from Turkish experts on their evolving threat landscape and multi-layered national strategy. Later this month, our Assembly will join the 8th meeting of the United Coordination Mechanism of Parliamentary Assemblies on Counterterrorism, hosted by the House of Representatives of Cyprus. The CCT will soon launch the OSCPA School Dialogues in Preventing Youth Radicalization, inspired by the Porto Resolution. The initiative brings parliamentarians into secondary schools to engage students, teachers, and local authorities on how civic awareness can counter extremist narratives. Through interactive sessions, students will discuss misinformation, digital responsibility, and democratic participation, elaborating recommendations for policymakers. The first edition will take place on the 27th of November 2025 in Pardoni, Italy, led by Vice Chair Emanuele Loperfido with more than 100 students. Importantly, the program is strictly educational and non-partisan, conducted in close cooperation with local education authorities to strengthen understanding of democratic institutions and civic engagement. Members wishing to support this timely initiative are warmly encouraged to host similar events in their constituencies under OSCPA flag, of course. We would then collect and review all students' recommendations to inform our future deliberations. Looking ahead to 2026, the CCT will work closely with the OSCPA special representatives on organized crime, youth, and artificial intelligence to promote the ethical use of AI in security contexts, strengthen education and resilience building, and address the evolving nexus between crime and terrorism. In closing, I would like to thank you, Mr. President, for your continued trust. I also commend our Secretary General and his team for their foresighted support. Finally, I would like to express my personal gratitude to our committee members for their dedication. Together, we shall defend our collective security and democratic values. Thank you.
Çok teşekkür ederim diye Kamil. And again, I would like to reiterate that I think we are all very proud of this ad hoc committee because it's really an important reference worldwide, and I think that we have to work harder to even be bigger. So thank you again for your work. And now I would like to give the floor to Farah Karimi, who is the new chair of the Migration Committee, to report on the activities of the committee. Thank you, and Farah, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mr. President, let me start by thanking you for appointing me to this position. I feel very honored and also a huge responsibility. We know that migration is a topic which is on the top of the political agenda almost in every and each society. And our committee has 15 members from 13 different participating states of OSCE PA, and we have also those different ideas and political thinking about migration. And in that sense, it is a very, very important place for us to have a dialogue with each other, but also to understand actually the experiences, policies, and also the challenges that different participating states have. And I think this is a great platform for us and a very important example of having dialogue on a political, a very high politicized and polarized topic with each other. So in that sense, I am also grateful for all members of the committee for participating and sharing their ideas, and we try really to find the best practices, because we are all looking for how have a management of migration that is human, that is aligned with actually human rights, international laws, and at the same time is actually possible for our societies to deal with it. That was also the reason why we immediately started to define our priorities as the committee. And we have come up with 3 topics for the next 2 years. Of course, we are not going to be blind for the developments and changes and actual things happening on this area, but we have decided to focus on 3 topics. The one is actually, the first one, the implementation of European Asylum and Migration Pact. As especially the participating members from the European Union know, there has been for many years actually at European level discussion to come up with a more harmonized European asylum and migration policy. Now we have a pact which has actually which was concluded under presidency of Spain government last year. And from 12th of June of 2026, the European Asylum and Migration Pact, which is actually a pact of different laws, will be directly actually influencing all of our European Union member states. So it is a very important piece of legislation. And we are going to focus on that because it is quite complex. It needs a lot of action from member states, and it needs also a lot of action from European Commission. We have already actually had a session, online session with the head of the European Commission's Directorate for Migration and Asylum, and also with the representatives of UNHCR, where we could hear where we stand now in the implementation of the pact. And we are going to organize also a visit to a European Commission and other institutions in Brussels in January for our committee. This is a very important part of our activities. The second topic, which will be actually the focus of our activities, is the experience and challenges of the local authorities. in dealing with migration, because we have always, again and again, this piece of policy coming from national governments, but at the end, the local authorities, they are the ones who have actually to deal with migration and the society. And we will start with that part already today here in Istanbul. And I am very grateful to the Turkish delegation. They have actually helped us in organizing the meeting today, and we will focus on the experiences of Istanbul. We will have representatives from the Turkish government, of course, national government, but also local authorities and NGOs from different migrant communities. And they will talk with each other, with us. And we hope that we can actually see what are the best practices, because that's the main mandate of our committee. And the third topic that we will actually focus on will be on migration and development. Migration has a direct impact, economic impact, on both sides, receiving countries and also the countries where the people depart from. And we are going to also focus on that. And these are the topics that we will focus, and I am really grateful to the support that we receive from Secretariat, especially Farima Daftari, really grateful for the work that she does, and looking forward for the really cooperation with other colleagues in our committee for the next 2 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Farah. And I think that Irene Karalambidis from Cyprus, head of delegation, wants to take the floor. Thank you, Irene.
Can you hear? Yeah, okay, now it works. I wanted to raise an issue to my colleague Farah Karami. Leaving the problem and the issue of the migration in the Mediterranean, especially in Cyprus and other countries, there is a huge issue with Syria. And I'm wondering, I know Syria is not a member of OSCE, but still this organization has cooperated with the authorities and arranged for visiting countries that are not member. If we intend to do something on visiting Syria and checking out how things are there, because it's a country we have to focus on when it comes to migration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Irene. Maybe Farima wants to take the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. No, thank you for this question. This is actually one of the topics that we will discuss this afternoon when we are talking about the activities. And I know that the delegation from Cyprus is very much interested in visiting Syria. I myself, I am also very interested in visiting Syria. The point is, and I think this is what we have to go and discuss, is we don't have a counterpart in Syria. We don't have a parliament, we don't have actually a group of parliamentarians that could help us. But I hope that we can have a conversation about that in this afternoon and see whether there are other ways of organizing. I am very much interested in seeing what is going on in Syria, but we need someone to organize it, to help us to organize a counterpart, and we don't have that, and we have to think about that, whether there is another way to find. Thank you very much.
Okay, I would like to give the floor again to the Cyprus delegation.
Thank you,
Kyriakos has the floor.
I think it was this priority was discussed very intensively in the Migration Ad Hoc Committee, and the final decision at those times was that we have to organize this field mission in Syria. Syria is so important not because just it is Syria, but it is actually the main source of the problem. And because we want to see all the aspects of migration, for thousands, for millions of migrants, and for many different reasons. So it was the reason why the Migration Committee, the ad hoc Migration Committee, took this decision to organize this field mission. It is not an excuse to say that we don't have any parliament or something like that in Syria. We are able, and we discussed this also in the committee, we are able to use all the contacts we have through different origins, also in cooperation with Turks colleagues, with the Greek colleagues, with the Italian colleagues, to have a very good and productive program in Syria. In Syria is a place where we have to see the main problem of migration. So for this reason, I please the chair of the committee to follow the common decision of the committee, also from all the other members, and to put this as a priority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyriakos. I have two more speakers. Eugenio from Italy, Mr. Altiton from Turkey. Let's try to be brief because we still have a lot of things to discuss. And Eugenio, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. Grazie. Grazie, Presidente. Sarò brevissimo. D'accordo con il collega Kyriakos che rispetto al fenomeno migratorio è sempre importante esaminare tutti gli aspetti. Lo dico da vicepresidente, lo dico anche da rappresentante speciale per la lotta alla criminalità organizzata e mi rivolgo alla collega Farah Karimi. Io rinnovo la disponibilità per seguire i lavori del Comitato ad hoc sulle migrazioni e partecipare proprio anche nella mia veste di rappresentante speciale per la lotta alla criminalità organizzata. Proporrò, e lo faccio anche adesso, una visita sul campo alla sede di Frontex a Varsavia e credo che possa essere assolutamente utile anche per analizzare insieme, ahimè purtroppo, i legami e le connessioni che ci sono tra la criminalità organizzata e il fenomeno migratorio. Penso ai trafficanti di uomini, agli scafisti, al traffico di esseri umani e poi tutti i reati che sono commessi e le organizzazioni criminali che gestiscono questi traffici. Grazie.
Grazie, caro Eugenio. Mr. Antitom, you have the floor.
Değerli Başkan, değerli meslektaşlarım, hazır söz gelmişken tekrar İstanbul'da Türkiye'de sizleri ağırlamaktan büyük bir meslektaşlarım adına da söylüyorum. Onur ve gurur duyduğumu belirtmek istiyorum. Güzel çalışmalar, güzel anılarla Türkiye'den ayrılmanızda, özellikle İstanbul'dan ayrılmanızda diliyorum. Suriye noktasında tabii Farah'ın da, diğer arkadaşların da, Hacıyan'ın da söylemlerine katılıyorum. Yani Suriye'de olup bitenleri belki dünyada en fazla, en yakın hisseden ve takip eden ülke Türkiye ve bizleriz. Bu noktada sınırlı da olsa bundan bir buçuk ay önce bir seçim yapıldığını hepimiz biliyoruz. Ben bu toplantı hazırlıkları sırasında Suriye'ye yeni atanan Türkiye Büyükelçisi ile görüştüğümde fırsat olabilme, imkan yaratabilme zamanımız olsaydı Suriye'den de yeni seçilen parlamenterlerden bu toplantıya katılmalarını özellikle arzu etmiştim ama yetiştiremedik. Zaman bulma noktasında sıkıntı yaşadık. Eğer göç komitesi bu manada Farah yine Türkiye heyetinden Kemal Çelik de onun yardımcısı bir çalışma yaparlarsa Türkiye'nin bu noktada ziyaret noktasında kolaylaştırıcılığını sağlamaya gayret ederiz. Özellikle bizim Dışişleri Bakanlığı üzerinden ve ilgili arkadaşların çalışmalarıyla Türkiye bu manada kolaylaştırıcı bir rol oynayabilir. Ama altyapısını iyi yapmak lazım. Tabii ki güvenlik noktasında sahada hala sıkıntılar var. O güvenlik noktasındaki sıkıntıları Suriye hükümetiyle, mevcut hükümetiyle ne kadar giderebilme şansı var. Üzerinde çalışılması lazım gelir. Çalışıldığı takdirde de Türkiye'nin bu manada ziyaret noktasında kolaylaştırıcı bir rolü oynayacağını özellikle arkadaşların bilmesini istiyorum. Teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you, Mr. Antiltop, and thank you for the suggestion. I give 30 seconds to Irene.
I want to praise what Mr. Altinok said. Thank you, my dearest colleague, for your cooperation. And I think, Mr. President, where there is a will, there is a way. And already we found the way, thanks to my colleague, Mr. Altinok. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene, and I hope you will have time to debate it in your own committee. And because we have less than 40 minutes, I would like to give the floor to Sharon Hodgson on behalf of the Parliamentary Support Team for Ukraine now, and also I would like to give the floor after to Karina Odebrecht to talk about the deported children of Ukraine. So first, dear Sharon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, let me begin by expressing my sincere thanks to President Pons for appointing me as chair of the Parliamentary Support Team for Ukraine. It is a privilege to take on this role, and I'm honoured to serve alongside our dedicated co-chairs, Mikita Poturayev and Joe Wilson, whose leadership and commitment have proven instrumental to the PSTU's work. Together, we are united in our resolve to ensure that Ukraine remains at the forefront of our Assembly's agenda to mobilise and coordinate parliamentary support for its sovereignty, territorial integrity, democratic resilience, and the pursuit of justice and accountability. I continue to closely follow developments in Ukraine and remain deeply engaged with the humanitarian situation and the broader efforts to support recovery and resilience. The challenges are profound, but our declarations provide us with a very clear mandate to continue to support Ukraine. In this spirit, the United Kingdom was proud to co-sponsor yesterday's seminar entitled Forging Ukraine's Post-War Future, Assessing Electoral Capacity and Readiness, held here in Istanbul. It was organised in partnership with our Assembly, ODIHR and the national delegations of Ukraine, Turkey and Canada. The event brought together close to 80 participants, including Ukrainian parliamentarians, electoral authorities, civil society representatives, international election observation partners and experts. This timely and forward-looking seminar provided a platform to assess Ukraine's preparedness for potential post-conflict elections. Discussions addressed the restoration of electoral infrastructure, the inclusion of internally displaced persons and diaspora communities, legal and security challenges in war-affected areas, and the implementation of key recommendations from the ODIHR. The event also emphasised the importance of meaningful international observation and laid the groundwork for a roadmap to support Ukraine's democratic commitment, including in the context of upcoming electoral cycles. Building on this momentum, I'm also pleased to confirm that I will join President Pons at the 4th Parliamentary Summit of the International Crimea Platform in Stockholm on the 23rd to the 24th of November. This summit offers a vital opportunity to reaffirm our shared commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Looking further ahead, I have convened a meeting of the Parliamentary Support Team for Ukraine on the 10th of December, and I look forward to working with fellow members to assess recent developments, set strategic priorities, and shape our continued engagement into 2026 and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, and really thank you to all who organized the event that we were having yesterday here. It was really a great momentum for the organization and also for Ukraine. I would like to give the floor to Karina Odebrecht on report of the special children and her new position as special envoy.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, dear Pira. Dear colleagues, let me start by expressing my sincere gratitude to President Pons for the trust you have shown in appointing me as special envoy on the return of the Ukrainian children. This new role builds naturally on my earlier work as PSTU Special Rapporteur, where I focused on Russia's abductions and deportation of Ukrainian children. Since taking this mandate, I have had constructive and straightforward dialogue with the Ukrainian co-chairs of the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children. First Deputy Foreign Minister Mariana Betsa, Mr. Maxim Maximov from President Zelensky's cabinet, and Ambassador Yuri Vitrenko in Vienna. These conversations have confirmed a clear and shared interest in deepening cooperation with our Assembly, especially within the framework of the Coalition. I have reviewed the Coalition's documents carefully. Their work is fully in line with our declarations from Birmingham, Vancouver, Bucharest, and Porto. With that in mind, and based on our Assembly's acquis and our strong commitment to justice and accountability, I recommend that the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly should join the coalition. And today, it brings together more than 40 countries and 2 international organizations, the European Union and the Council of Europe. If formalized, our accession would make us the first parliamentary assembly to join. It would give the coalition a parliamentary voice and help support governments in their efforts to bring the children home. I therefore welcome and fully support President Pons' intention to announce our accession during the inaugural session today. To strengthen public awareness, I have also visited 3 of Sweden's largest universities to speak with students of human rights and global studies about my July report and the wider implication of Russia's action. These meetings have helped deepen an understanding of the scale and seriousness of these abductions and have also highlighted the important work carried out by our Assembly. Looking ahead, the Swedish OSCE delegation and the PASE delegation are organizing a high-level meeting in Stockholm on 24th of November in connection with the 4th Parliamentary Summit of the International Crimea Platform. The speakers of the Swedish and Ukrainian parliaments will participate together with Nathaniel Raymond from the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab and other leading human rights experts. I look forward to reporting back to the Assembly after that meeting. Once our accession to the coalition is formalized, I will represent our Assembly in its work and meetings in line with our declaration and continue contributing to the crucial task of helping to return Ukrainian children to their families and to their country. But before closing, let me underline one thing. This work, the return of the abducted Ukrainian children, must be carried out both in the short and in the long term. I am genuinely pleased that our Assembly can contribute to deeper international cooperation in support of Ukraine. And right now, it's crucial that we secure continued financing for the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab. This includes encouraging the US administration to resume its commitment for the sake of the children. Their documentation is essential for identifying and locating the children, for enabling their return to Ukraine, and for ensuring that those responsible at every level are held to account. And in everything we do, we must be absolutely clear. Every child must be brought home. And the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and the best interest of the child must guide us in all our actions. And I would also like to take the possibility to thank the Ukrainian delegation, ODIHR, Canada and UK for yesterday's electoral seminar. Many examples of challenges, problems, but also important suggestions were given for conducting a free and fair election in the future. One thing was clearly emphasized: it is not possible to conduct an election under martial law, but we need to continue the work of preparedness with all stakeholders involved. And we also need to support the Ukrainian Central Election Commission. Thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership and for the opportunity to contribute to this important work of our Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Karina. And before giving the floor to the Ukrainian delegation, let me tell you that I would like to confirm to the Standing Committee that this afternoon I will officially announce our decision to join the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children, in line with Karina's recommendation, her July report, as I said before, and in full consistency with our declarations, particularly with the Bucharest Declaration, which explicitly supports the establishment of this coalition and urges OSCE participant states to join. The application procedures, including the joint declaration, have been thoroughly reviewed and found to be fully compliant with the Parliamentary Assembly acquis. If there is anyone wanting to take the floor, but now I would like to give the floor to the Ukrainian delegation, to Artur Gerasim. Artur, you have the floor.
Dear Mr. President, dear Mr. Secretary General, distinguished colleagues, first of all, on behalf of Ukrainian delegation, I want to say thank you for Turkish delegation for your hospitality, for all countries who have supported Ukraine for your support, and for the Assembly for your activities starting from 2014 and especially starting from 2022. For your activities, for example, yesterday was a brilliant seminar on post-war elections. Of course, it's very hard to speak about elections under the shellings, but at the moment, Ukrainian people are fighting for democracy, for democratic values. And the key base point of these democratic values are elections. And that's why it was really very constructive issue and really constructive exchange of opinions, and it was very informative and well organized. Also, I totally welcome, and Ukrainian delegation totally welcome initiative of President Pons and Assembly to join the coalition on return of stolen Ukrainian children, because this is real genocide against Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian nation. And thank you very much that you are really increasing this movement. Dear colleagues, Russia deliberate attacks on critical civilian infrastructure, particularly energy and nuclear facilities, constitute a grave violation of international law, notably the international humanitarian law basic principles. These attacks have no legitimate military relevance and are nothing less than acts of violence and a clear manifestation of terrorism. Just one example, 8th of November 2025, one day, 45 missiles and 458 shaheds. And I want to stress your attention, they attacked not only hydro and heat power plants, but also they on purpose attacked energy substations which are providing the functioning of 2 nuclear power plants. And it's not only about Ukraine, it's about all Europe and not only. I think all of you still remember Chernobyl. Also, I need to say that on the front line, situation is complicated, but not as Russia describing. From senior officials in Moscow to ordinary propagandists, the Russian authorities persist in promoting the image of Russia's so-called total success. Notably, even within Russia, not everyone shares this view. Despite well-documented facts, the Russian side continues to sustain its own illusion. It rejects calls for immediate ceasefire and refuses to engage in constructive negotiations based on international law. It disregards its mounting human and economic losses. Moscow, which once claimed to be one of the world's leading military powers, denies that after almost 4 years of full-scale invasion, it has failed to conquer Ukraine, which continues to defend itself and inflict substantial damage on the aggressor. I am from opposition, but we are united. And because of that, I kindly ask all countries who have supported Ukraine, continue and increase support for Ukrainian people, military help, sanctions against aggressor, because we need drastically decrease military and economic potential of Russian Federation. Special attention please pay to the Shadow fleet, which is carrying not only oil, but also the stolen Ukrainian grain. The Ukrainian people are defending their sovereignty based on fundamental norms, fundamental principles and values. This is the real Helsinki spirit. And to Belarus, I want to say, if you want to be and operate according to the Helsinki principle, just stop to support aggressor, just stop to support Russia. And now, in conclusion, I kindly ask all who are supporting Ukraine, be united for Ukrainian people. They are fighting not only for Ukraine, but for each of you. Ukraine today is a shield of Europe and all democratic world. Please remember about it, and despite any moments, support our country and support our heroic people.
Thank you very much, Artur. And as you know, when we were visiting your country, when we were meeting with President Zelensky, with the Foreign Affairs Minister, and with the chair of the Rada, we, the team, and also Lucia Taher and myself, in the name of the Parliamentary Assembly, we expressed unity, and the President Zelensky asked to the Parliamentary Assembly of support to fight for democracy and to win this full-scale invasion. So thank you very much again for your words. And I would like to ask you that if you want to take the floor in the last point regarding the creation of the working group, just ask it now. I'm going to give a bit of logistical information on the future events, and then we can start the conversation on this working group. So let me just give you a little bit of information as the logistics is concerned, that on the 3rd of December, there will be a bureau meeting prior to the Ministerial Council that this year is going to be held in Vienna. The winter meeting, also in Vienna, will be held on the 19th and 20th of February 2026, 19th and 20th of February. The bureau will meet again in Copenhagen on the 27th of April 2026. And the annual session 2026 will be held in The Hague between the 4th of July and the 8th of July 2026. And the next autumn meeting, of course, will be hosted by our friends from Andorra. Again, I would like to repeat that we are still looking for a delegation that wants to host the future statutory meetings, especially the 2027 annual session. So I thank you in advance for any ideas, suggestions, or any candidates. And if you let me, because we have just 15 minutes left, I'm not going to speak too much on this, but at the last point on the proposal of an ad hoc working group, I will try to be very brief. During this summer, and the Secretariat received, I as President and of course the Secretariat received a letter from a group of parliamentarians in which this letter was suggesting and proposing the idea of creating a working group on the Middle East and Afghanistan. And as you know, according to the Article 35, Article 35, Paragraph 5, paragraph 5 of the rules of procedure, the body that has the capacity to approve this working group is the standing committee. So that's why we have this discussion today. Of course, this idea of this working group is in line of the action plan, and also I would like to remind you that there is a declaration from Porto, which also, Bucharest, sorry, which also mentions the idea of working in the region. But then if you need it, I can read it. But because I don't want to speak too much, I would like to say also that we have 2 letters that have been sent to the Secretariat and to me as well, in which they express their views on the creation of this this working group, one from the US delegation, another from the first committee. So I would like to listen to you. I would like to open the floor for discussion. And unfortunately, we have until 12. After 12, the translation will stop. So we can stay without translation, but I would like to ask you to be brief. So le premier intervenant, c'est Monsieur Demilly de la France. Merci.
Monsieur le Président, pour être bref, puisque vous nous l'avez demandé, au nom de la délégation française, je voudrais vous dire que nous ne sommes pas favorables à la création de ce groupe de travail sur le Moyen-Orient et l'Afghanistan, et pour plusieurs raisons. Il y en a 5 rapides. Premièrement, nous sortons de notre zone OSCE. La deuxième raison, c'est qu'on a suffisamment, et j'allais dire malheureusement, suffisamment de sujets à traiter au sein de notre espace OSCE. La troisième raison est que nous avons déjà évoqué tout à l'heure les problèmes de ressources de notre organisation, et qui dit groupe de travail dit moyens, dit dépenses, et je pense qu'il faut orienter notre créativité vers les ressources et non pas vers des dépenses supplémentaires. La quatrième raison, c'est qu'on traite déjà de ce sujet. On en a parlé à Bucarest, on en a parlé à Porto, le forum méditerranéen traite aussi de ce sujet, il en a parlé à Dublin, et je sais qu'il en parlera donc après-demain. Et puis enfin, cinquième et dernière raison, c'est qu'il est important de préalablement consulter les États partenaires pour avoir leur avis, l'Algérie, le Maroc, la Tunisie, l'Égypte, la Jordanie et l'Israël. Enfin bref, vous avez compris à travers cette kyrielle de raisons que nous ne sommes vraiment pas favorables à la création de ce groupe de travail.
Merci, Monsieur Demilly. Irene Carambidis a la parole.
I am one of the 70-80 parliamentarians that signed the letter pointing out that the necessity is to form a group on Mediterranean, not Afghanistan, because Afghanistan is in Asia. So if we want a group to focus on Middle East, on Asia and Afghanistan, that would be proper. But at the moment, Middle East has huge, huge issues. And what we sign, me and my other colleagues, is for this group to add also North Africa. And why we suggest this? Because Egypt is one of the major players in the area. So, players in the area. So I think if we combine Middle East and North Africa, that can work perfectly because we have common issues. We're worried about the same things, and I think this is how we should approach this issue. Mediterranean, North Africa, and don't forget that Egypt is a permanent partner of this organization, like Israel and other countries in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Mark Krajic from Slovakia has the floor.
Dear colleagues, thank you for convening this important meeting. I would like to briefly address the proposal to create an ad hoc new working group focused on the Middle East and Afghanistan. Let me state clearly that Slovakia fully recognizes the importance of developments in the Middle East and their impact on international security. However, establishing such a politically sensitive and inherently divisive working group under the umbrella of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is, in my view, neither timely nor appropriate. The OSCE already faces an extremely demanding agenda that directly concerns the security and stability of our participating states. We are dealing with the ongoing Russian aggression against Ukraine, the deteriorating security environment in the wider region, the recent developments in Georgia and their implications for democratic institutions, and fundamental freedoms, as well as multiple protracted conflicts across the OSCE area. These issues require our undivided attention, resources, and collective energy. Creating an additional working group on a region outside the OSCE's geographical focus risks overstretching the Assembly, diluting its mandate, and drawing us into debates that are highly politicized and unlikely to produce consensus. Instead of supporting unity, such steps could deepen existing divisions within the PA. For these reasons, I believe that establishing this working group is not a constructive way forward. Slovakia will vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. And John Lahart has the floor from Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just some brief points. Look, I suppose from our perspective, we have had an open debate on issues relating to the Middle East in relation to Israel and Palestine in Porto and in Rome, and I note that there is an open debate this Wednesday also on the same topic. I noted earlier when the Treasurer reported on the financial constraints of the OSCE, I do suspect that this could stretch the resources of the OSCE even farther. Europe faces significant threats in terms of security, in terms of democracy. We spoke about them in the earlier part of the debate. We can say that part of European territory is at war, and I think we can say reasonably accurately that much of Europe is not at peace, and that is where I believe our focus should be in the period of time ahead. I do welcome and support the continued allocation of time by the OSCE plenary sessions to discuss issues connected with the Middle East, and particularly in relation to the ongoing Palestinian and Israeli conflict, and I would support and encourage that time continue to be allocated to discussing that. Thank you.
Merci. Björn Söder from Sweden has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to question the proposal of establishing a working group. I think it's quite strange that we start focusing on problems and challenges outside the OSCE area. We have enough problems within our regions, not least the war in Ukraine, and there are lots of conflicts around the world. We, as this organization, can't focus and work on all these conflicts, so let us focus on the ones inside our area, and they are sadly too many, and let other organizations focus and work on others. I also want to remind everyone that we already have a Mediterranean forum where discussions on this topic might suit. And last but not least, we already have a tight budget we have to take into account. So let us focus on the challenges we have inside our own region and not starting working groups for conflicts and challenges outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Björn. We have 4 more speakers and we have 6 minutes. So Luis Graça has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have been discussing the Middle East, namely the conflict in Palestine, very intensely. I remember an annual session in Romania and the most warm discussion on the final declaration regarding Gaza. I believe we never had such a polarized discussion as the one that took place in Bucharest. Therefore, Our concerns about the Israel-Palestine conflict will not disappear if we do not have this group, nor will our discussions in the plenary sessions be less intensive with the creation of this working group. Even if this conflict is not within the borders of the Parliamentary Assembly, the point is that it is clear and direct threat to the geopolitical space of the OSCE. I had the special opportunity to be in Jerusalem and in the West Bank with President Pierre Kalma and with President Pere. I remember the words of the Patriarch of the Greek Orthodox Church. Europeans understand a lot of democracy, but very little of religion. And that's a critical factor in finding a solution for Israel and Palestine. In Helsinki, 50 years ago, we decided that those who think differently should come together in a single organization. We decided that dialogue, multiculturalism, and consensus would be the foundation of this organization. Put it together and not divide. With the new working group or in the plenary sessions, our efforts have to be always directed to dialogue and peace building. Israel and Palestine need to find a path to diplomacy and peace. This should be our central contribution. Our efforts and energy must always be directed to peace, anywhere in the world, in Ukraine, but also in Israel and Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. And the head of the German delegation has the floor. Tobias, you have the floor.
Mr. President, thank you very much. So I couldn't agree more to those who say we have to focus on our own OSCE region. But I also have empathy for them who feel that there must be some engagement. And if you're a close neighbor to the Middle East countries, then even more. So I just want to assure to everyone that in the first committee, third committee, ad hoc committee on migration and Mediterranean Forum, we have already some bodies. We will discuss this question. So I oppose the establishment of an ad hoc committee, but I want to assure that to everyone that is concerned about the development there, that we will deal in our bodies that already exist. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tobias. And Marius Nielsen from Norway has the floor now. Marius.
Thanks, President. And for the Norwegian delegation, we would advise against this new working committee. The OSCE should focus on the existing missions. There's no reason to expand. This will spread the resources even further, and as it has been stated quite sometimes already, the resources are limited. So in that regard, internal conflicts, turmoil, and a hornet's nest instead of consensus can be the result. So the Norwegian delegation would like us to improve, focus and improve on existing operations in existing areas and optimize those. Thanks.
Thank you, Marius. And now I want to give the floor to Axel Kasseger, the head of mission, the head of delegation of Austria. Sorry before, because I was mistaken. You have the floor, Axel.
Vielen Dank, sehr geehrter Präsident. Ich darf Ihnen auch von meiner Seite zu Ihrer Wahl gratulieren. Wir namens der österreichischen Delegation lehnen die Einrichtung einer solchen Working Group auch ab. Die Gründe sind schon genannt worden. Erstens sollten wir uns auf unser eigenes Territorium konzentrieren. Zweitens sind die budgetären Rahmenbedingungen so, dass wenig Spielraum besteht. Drittens gibt es, Sie haben es schon erwähnt, zwei Briefe, einen vom First Committee und einen vom Senator Wicker, dem Head of Delegation der amerikanischen Delegation, die eine solche Einrichtung auch ablehnen. Wir sehen das auch so. Außerdem ist auch schon angesprochen worden, haben wir viele Gremien, die sich dieser Angelegenheit auch widmen können. Das First Committee, das Committee on Migration, das Mediterranean Forum, und auch, wir haben auch einen Special Representative on the Mediterranean, so da gibt es genügend Organisationen bzw. Möglichkeiten, sich dieses Themas zu widmen. Deswegen lehnen wir eine Einrichtung einer solchen zusätzlichen Working Group ab. Vielen Dank.
Thank you, Axel. We have 1 minute left. I'm going to give the floor to Uzbekistan first, because there is translation for 1 minute. Uzbekistan first, and then we will follow in English for 5 more minutes, not more, okay? Dear colleague, go ahead.
Hello. Honorable Chair, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. First of all, I would like to express my gratefulness to organizers of this event, of this meeting. It means OSCE PA administration and the Parliament of Turkey for good organization of this event. About the creation of this group, I don't know exactly what would be the task of this group, but I think the idea is very good because, first of all, speaking about global and regional security, we cannot neglect the issue of Afghanistan. Supporting the aspirations of Afghan people and for peaceful and stable for peaceful life requires the unified efforts of the whole international community. It is of utmost to conduct constructive dialogue with the country's current government and not to prevent, we have to prevent the isolation of Afghanistan. A lot of issues related to Afghanistan, and so that to solve them, of course, we have to have dialogue, we have to discuss. The whole community, the world community, and the regional community should be involved. And I think that the idea of creation of such a group is a very good idea. Of course, I highly respect the opinion of other delegations, but I think that it's a very good idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I would like to thank you, the translators, that they will stay for 5 more minutes. So I would like to give the floor to Gabor Haidu from Romania, then to Eugenio Zoffili, Jevrosina Penjovic, and Roberto Montella will close the session. So, and if I can say a word, perfect. So, Gabor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. OSCE has to show and enforce its meaning, weight, purpose, and relevance. And only formal working groups and talks about big problems outside the OSCE area without relevant outcome, I'm sad to say that it will show only irrelevance of the body. And with all due respect, I think we should reconsider this proposal, as I do not think fit for this body, and I do not support this. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Thank you, Gabor. Eugenio, you have the floor.
Grazie Presidente. Io ho letto con interesse sia la proposta che è stata sottoposta alla sua attenzione e alla nostra attenzione, la creazione di questo gruppo di lavoro, ma anche la lettera firmata da Visi, dal Presidente della Prima Commissione Affari Politici e Sicurezza, dal Vicepresidente e dal rapporteur Winkler. Sono assolutamente d'accordo con i pensieri e con la posizione espressa dalla leadership della Prima Commissione Affari Politici della nostra Assemblea parlamentare, che esprimono contrarietà, che esprimono dei dubbi. Sono d'accordo con quanto espresso anche dai colleghi che sono intervenuti prima di me. C'è già un forum sul Mediterraneo, c'è la Prima Commissione, c'è un rappresentante speciale, ci sono altri organismi. Ci tengo in questo contesto, dato che si rivolge alla situazione in Medio Oriente, anche a ringraziare per suo tramite, Presidente, la delegazione degli Stati Uniti d'America, che nella figura del proprio Presidente Trump hanno fatto tanto e hanno ottenuto dei risultati straordinari per la pace in quell'area. Grazie.
Grazie, Eugenio, and Jevrosina Penjovic has the floor.
Thank you. I really appreciate the interest in all topics affecting OSCE region, and our region is not an island, and instability in Middle East and any elsewhere has direct consequences on us. That is why it is essential to address those issues within the formal formats we already have. The first committee is the proper form, as well as ad hoc committee for countering terrorism. We also have a Mediterranean forum, and we have a special representative representative for Mediterranean. I fear that creating a new structure would isolate this topic and that our strong statements will remain only that, strong words, if we don't put those important issues at the committees designed to address them, especially at the time when our organization is facing a crisis. We risk undermining its purpose. By expanding our structure with yet another group in this period when we are facing crisis in our region, we risk that we will create the perception of strength, and that perception could in fact weaken us and harm us as an organization, and at the time and in this time when we can least afford it. Thank you.
Thank you, Yevrosina. And before taking the floor, I will pass the parole Roberto.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to all of those who have presented letters or have argued on one side of the aisle and the other side of the aisle. At the Munich Security Conference a few years ago, the foreign ministers of Israel, Iran, and Saudi Arabia all said it would be great if in our region, in their region, they would arrange an organization that deals with political military security, with the economic environment and human rights, which is the OSCE. So they thought maybe for that region it would be great to have an OSCE of the Middle East. Now, on this debate, whether this assembly should create an additional ad hoc committee on the region. Well, first of all, to do that, you need consensus. And from the debate, it's clear if there is a vote, this is not going to happen. And my advice would be, whenever we want to do things in this parliamentary assembly, which is extreme flexibility, which doesn't have the rule of consensus, only when we have to change the rules, we need to use consensus. For everything else, we can decide. The organization, OSCE, is blocked for 20 years because they cannot pass a budget, because they cannot make decisions, because they have the consensus. Why should we go into dealing with consensus and decisions to make consensual decisions when we obviously do not have consensus? Let's be more creative. President Pere, you have the flexibility to do a lot of stuff. Pia Kalma, I see there is also President Seretel in the room here. In the past, they have used the possibility of the president to take initiatives. So the point of those who have presented this initiative is to be more active. I would argue we are very active already. The head of the French delegation gave 5 points. I totally subscribe with the 5 points which have been echoed by you. We are already active on the region. We want to be more active. We want to be more engaged. We can do that without the creation of an ad hoc group because we will not be able to create it because obviously there is no consensus. So let's not be discouraged or be on one side or the other side of the aisle on this issue, because obviously there is no consensus, so the group cannot be created. But the President and those of you who are interested in being more engaged can take initiatives, we can be more active, we can make visits. What would an ad hoc group anyway do? Would sit together, discuss and engage and do the marches. This can be done in a more informal manner without a formal decision to create an ad hoc body. Aware of the costs and the difficulties also of us having in those countries also counterparts in order to be able to organize visits or to take activities. So I would say an appeal to be practical, to not throw ourselves into the same difficulties of finding consensus on issues where obviously there is no consensus. And thank you very much again to the interpreters for staying longer. Mr. President.
So just to close, the first important thing is that lunch will be served at 12:30, just at the hall next to this meeting room. And I would like to close by saying thank you to all delegations for the rich dialogue from 9 to 12. That's really powerful. And I would like to end by saying that I think we all agree on the content of this discussion and we disagree on the recipient, but still the content is the important thing. So I really would like to thank you all for the time, these 3 hours, and also for the rich discussion. So again, lunch is served at 12:30 and I think the official meeting will start later. So thank you very much again and I close the session.